To order and welcome Tuan Purser, student from American Legion High School, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Stay there. Tuan Purser, and did I pronounce that right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Is currently a senior at American Legion High School and represents a story of resiliency, determination, and success. Tuan faced a challenging start in high school, but he has overcome many obstacles to get where he is today. Tuan has worked extremely hard to complete classes necessary for graduation and has surpassed many of his peers. In addition, Tuan has also received 2 awards last year: the Citizenship Award and the Environmental Service Award for his volunteer work with the high school and surrounding Oak Park community. This year, Tuan continues his achievements and was recently selected by his peers as student government president. In addition, he was chosen by his teachers to lead the Men's Leadership Academy Student Council and was appointed as the American Legion delegate for the monthly SCUSD Youth Council meetings. Tuan has been offered early admission to 2 colleges on the East Coast, but plans to become a UC Davis Aggie. In closing, Tuan offers this advice to other students who are having a hard time in high school. Self-discipline is the key to success. You have to believe in yourself and stay driven. The Sacramento City Unified School District is proud to recognize Tuan Purser as a stellar student. The floor is yours.
I just want to thank the district for honoring me with this award. I'd like to thank God for giving me the open doors to go through. I'd like to thank all the teachers and staff at American Legion High School and my parents for taking their day to just help me, get with my school and get to school and just be ahead in my work and just strive in my success. Thank you.
Very heartfelt.
Award you the certificate of appreciation.
Thank you.
This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption, with the exception of technical problems on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel on the Comcast and SureWest cable systems. Today's meeting will air Sunday, October 5th at 9 a.m., Monday, October 6th at 6 p.m., and webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker identification form located in the back of the room and give it to Chief Communications Officer, Mr. Ross, prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your full name for the record. Responses to the questions by the public will be posted on the district website prior to the next board meeting. Please limit comments during public comment to the items not listed on the agenda. If you are found to be commenting on an item that is on the agenda, you will be asked to defer until the item comes up on the agenda. Please turn off all cell phones or place them on the silent or vibrate mode.
Thank you, Vice President Pritchett. Item 5.0, announcement of action taken in closed session.
President Wu, I'm very pleased to announce to the board that by unanimous decision, the board approved the appointment of Erin Hansen as the new principal at Caleb Greenwood Elementary School, and I believe she's in the audience. Yeah, and maybe we could have her come up. Erin, would you like to come up and say a few words? Come on up. Let's see how she does under pressure.
Good evening, everyone. I didn't prepare anything, so I'll just speak off the cuff. I'm incredibly happy to be here. I started my career as a teacher in the Sac City Unified School District. I was in the intern program, and I'm thrilled to be back, and I can't wait to get started at Caleb Greenwood and dig into the IB program. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. I feel it is a huge privilege to be here.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Item 7.0, public comment. Mr. Ross?
We have 7 comments on 7.0. I'll read the first 4 names, and if folks can please line up behind the podium in the order you're called. Tom Rogers, Frank DeYoung, Sherry Beck, and Ralph Merletti.
Good evening, President, Board of Trustees. I am Tom Rogers. I am a member of the Sacramento Area California Teachers Association, National Education Association Retired Teacher Group. I am a product of the Sacramento City Unified School District, and my family has had 4 generations who have graduated from Sac City. My father was a teacher and an administrator in the district and wrote the history of the first 100 years of the Sac City Unified School District. I, too, was a janitor and a teacher in the district for 32 years and a retired president of the Sacramento City Teachers Association. Tonight, I'd like to ask you one question. Is it true that you have made a unilateral change to the collective bargaining agreement in terms of retiree benefits? If that is true, stop. Please follow the contract. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Frank DeYoung, and my grandchildren go to Hollywood Park School. Thank you all for the time this evening. Basically, I'm here to say 2 words. Thank you. I have had the privilege of working with district staff the last 2 years on several committees and several issues, from closing schools on transition committees to graduation criteria committees to the district advisory committee and others. And you know, I have to tell you, you should be proud of the staff that work for you. They take the decisions that you make and they make them happen. Despite of their personal beliefs or how they may feel about them, they go out and they do their jobs. And a lot of times that entails taking what parents don't understand, or they take out their anger or whatever on them and not you. And they always handle themselves in a professional manner. And they're taken for granted many times, and many people don't understand all the work that they do behind the scenes to make things happen. And I just wanted to recognize all district staff for all that they do, and thank you for what they do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Young.
Good evening, President and the Board of Trustees. My name is Sherry Beck. I am a retiree from this district of 32 years. I retired in 2004. I'm a parent, a voter in the city of Sacramento, a resident for 33 years, and an active member of the Retired Teachers Association, and also a community volunteer. I have sent each of you an email earlier in this week, and I hope that you have read it and taken it to heart and thought about what was in that email. I also have one question. Do you understand that health benefits are to be negotiated as per the contract? Please ratify this contract and follow the contract. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Bonda, President Wu, and school board members. I'm Ralph Merletti from Fruit Ridge area of Sacramento County. I've addressed this board twice previously about the upcoming solar eclipse. This time I'd like to talk briefly about safety. Everybody on the board up there and a few others here should have the color copy of the article that was distributed some minutes ago. Now, obviously, when dealing with the sun, we do not do direct observation, that is direct unfiltered observation. So we need to have the students aware of this. Projection is the best idea, and I will show you an example of that. This is some newspaper coverage I received in Denver many years ago, and this is how it's done if you have a telescope available. Now, not every school site is going to have one available. I've asked the Sacramento Valley Astronomical Society, their outreach section, which you can locate online, and to do something about this and to choose a school somewhere to do it. This is in the Denver Post, way back in, I think, 1974, the eclipse, how to do that. And one more from the, I think, the Rocky Mountain News on another eclipse a couple of years earlier. If you have this equipment, it's pretty good. But if you don't, you have to be aware of filters. Some are not safe, certainly not sunglasses. How about welder's glass? Number 14 is best. Number 12, maybe, but you really want the darkest number. 14, be careful about the mylar or aluminum little shades that you can put on. They may have or develop holes in them. So the best view is under direction of somebody available with a telescope. Please search online for solar eclipse safety, svas.org, and look at their outreach link. And I'll still have some more to say about this on our next meeting, which is getting very close to the eclipse. Everybody, let's have a great event like we did for the space shuttle a couple years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morletti. Okay.
Our final three comments on item 7.0 are from Angie Sutherland, Grace Trujillo, and Terrence Gladney.
Good evening, board members and Superintendent Bonda. I'm Angie Sutherland, and I'm a parent, and my daughter goes to Hollywood Park Elementary. And I'm here to ask for the return of the data dashboard. It was a wonderful system that was created in 2013, and we received presentations at the different parent advisory groups on the data dashboard, and it was very user-friendly. It was going to allow everyone, parents, teachers, students, employees, and community members to learn more and to be able to access data on student performance and discipline and a variety of things, but it doesn't seem to be working. And I think that it needs to come back because I don't know how we can make decisions if we don't have access to the data. I know you can get the data on other systems, but they just weren't as user-friendly, and they didn't drill down as deeply, I think, as the Sac Cities system. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that the Community Advisory Committee for Special Education has a workshop. Part 1 is October 14th, and it's engaging students with special needs in the Common Core state standards. So that's going to be a really good workshop. Part 2 will be November 18th, and these are 6:30 to 8:30 at Cerna Center. And we do have free childcare, so we hope to see all the community come out. And it would be great if Superintendent Bonda, if you could come maybe to a CAC meeting or to one of our workshops as well and see what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Grace Trujillo. Good evening, members of the board. It's been a while. The reason I'm here is I started thinking there's 1,200 school districts throughout California. All of them have different unions, different contracts, different negotiation. Sacramento, along with LA, is the only one that pays 0 premiums, whereas Elko, San Juan, all the surrounding schools pay $500. I kind of looked into it. It costs a premium of insurance like between $35,000 to $40,000. Sometimes the savings could be utilized for something. Right now, Stockton is having a major problems with their budgets and pensions and reforms. I know our school is too. We need to do something now, because if we wait the years to come, we're not going to have a future. And I'm concerned about the principals, the teachers, the clerical staff. If it doesn't reform, or the people that don't understand, if there's not changes now, how it's going to impact them in the future. As an accountant and as a person that has my own pension in the purse, I know those are things that need to be addressed. Be addressed now, and changing and modifying and finding efficiencies to get the same product but at lower cost. Because our schools are in great need of repairs. Just to give you an example, the buses right now, some of the kids in special ed, they're 2 hours on the bus just because there's not enough buses and there's not enough transportation. Just think about these kids. Sometimes some of them had a bowel movement that I know. Some of them teared up a seat because they were in there too long. There's not enough buses because they're old. They need maintenance. So we need to figure out strategies of where to save here, cut here, but we need to work together. And the only way we're going to do it is by unity and by standing up. It's really hard for me to stand up here because nobody knows there's a problem, but nobody speaks up. But we need to speak up, and we need to do it now. So thank you.
Good evening, President Wu, fellow board members, Superintendent Bonda. Excuse me. My name is Terrence Gladney. I'm president of Sacramento Council PTAs. And I'm here to announce an event. I think most of you guys know about it already, but if not, Monday evening, as part of our initiative and focus this year as a board, we really decided to put students first in everything that we do. And Monday will be our first general meeting. But attached to that general meeting, at which Superintendent Bonda will be there to address our membership, we're going to put students first by hopefully helping them bridge the gap to their requirements to graduation. So a lot of seniors, or most seniors, if not all of them, have a requirement to do senior projects. And, you know, I've seen personally students that, you know, come January, February, they're still scrambling, trying to find something to do. So what we decided to do was to put together a community resource fair and hopefully give them the resources that they need to identify something that they're passionate about. And not only from the standpoint of a requirement of senior projects, but also something that they may potentially have an interest in doing as a career. And for those who aren't seniors, we're inviting those as well. We already have a confirmed PTA member from Tahoe Elementary who's going to bring his 9 and 12-year-old to engage them in community service as an endeavor. Some of the organizations that we have confirmed already are Boys and Girls Club, California Youth Crisis Line, Health Professions High School is going to have their college advisor attend, My Sister's House, Sacramento Bike Kitchen, Sacramento Food Bank, Sacramento Public Library, Sacramento Tree Foundation, St. Vincent de Paul, Sacramento Shakespeare Festival Intern Program, and UC Davis 4-H Program. We have some other tentatives, and it's really just a start. You know, I think that our board firmly believes in trying to do something, and the only way to do it is to step out there and really step out on faith. But I could not do this or even come up here and announce this if it wasn't for the work of my board, especially our program VP, Angel Garcia, who has a lot of ties and networks in the community and really reached out and made sure that we have resources available for our students. So we look forward to your support and to seeing Superintendent Bonda engage our membership, and hopefully some of you board members can make it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gladney. I see that I was oh,
Sorry. The event is Monday, October 6th at Shriners Hospital from 6 to 8 p.m. It's in the downstairs auditorium. And parking there is free, so if you just park in the garage and say that you're coming to the event, you can, get parking free. My bad. That should have been the first thing I said, but thank you.
And as president of my sister's house, I appreciate being on the list, so thank you.
So you'll be there, right?
Sure.
All right.
Okay. I see that I missed item 6.0 and jumped into 7.0. So that is agenda adoption. I have a motion by Vice President Pritchett. Do I have a second? Pardon me? Second. Second by Vice President Hansen. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to the consent agenda, I've been asked by the staff to pull item 8.1C for discussion. Do I have comment on 8.1E?
We have one comment on 8.1E from Ralph Marletti.
So let's take the comment and then we'll move the consent.
Once again, I'm Ralph Merletti, and this time it's about that the scheduled field trip to Ashland, Oregon for the Shakespeare Festival. I wish the best of luck and enjoyment to everyone on that. And as I would say, as you go up there, as they go up there and back, take a look at the scenery along I-5 or whatever route they take. You're starting out with Lassen Peak to the east as you get through Red Bluff and then Redding and then the Shasta Reservoir. And hopefully it's got more water in there with more rain, but we don't want too much rain and clouds that are going to spoil something else while they're up there. But see Mount Shasta, several views. Too bad that the town of Weed had that fire there, but look at the mountain and its sister cone there. And that nice 4,000, that spectacular 4,000-foot pass right on the state line. Enjoy that too. And then the descent into Ashland for the plays there. And also, I noticed that the dates of that are October 21st to 24th. So I presume October 21st will be the day they go in private car up there. October 24th will be the day they come back. And in between that, just before they leave, the solar eclipse will be happening there too, with a little bit more to see, closer to maybe 58% of the solar diameter instead of the 52% we get here. As far as diameter, of course, the amount is less, but make sure you're well-versed ahead of time as to safety precautions. And you know the times. I'm going to leave one of these papers with, I believe Lisa Allen has written that article about the field trip, so I will leave this to be studied by the group going up there. So have a good time with both the Shakespeare Festival and the partial solar eclipse. Thank you.
Mr. Marletti. I have a motion to approve the consent with the exception of 8.1C. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Geraldo Castillo, would you like to discuss 8.1C, please?
Good evening, President Bush, Superintendent Banda, and members of the board. First, I want to thank Amari Watkins and Mark Smith and their teams for their great work in completing the narrative actions. Closing the books for the $600 million is not an easy thing to do, so thank you. What you have in your packets are the year-end narrative actions. The books are closed for 2013-14. We are just waiting for the we're just waiting for the audit in this coming next. Too far away. I used this before many times. Okay, just, yeah. Okay. The narrative actions include all the funds, but we will work today, we will focus on the general fund. We will discuss where the revenue comes from, how we spend our funds, why we have an increased fund balance, and why the historical ending fund balance is greater than the budget. Okay, good. Okay. So where does revenue come from? 85% of our revenue are the state. It comes from the state. That's between local control funding and other state revenue. We depend greatly on the state. The school district does, as well as the state does. If the economics for the state are good, the districts are good. So now how we spend our funds. We spend 91% of our expenses on salaries and benefits. We spend it in certificated staff, teachers, principals, counselors, nurses, classified staff, from custodians, office managers, district staff centrally. How about the restricted funds? We still spend about 67% in salaries and benefits. And we have operating expenses, $35 million or 25%. Out of that, $21 million are related for special ed. So now is why do we have an increase in fund balance? It's actually for the year 2013-14, we had two great things happen. First, we have about redevelopment fees, about $2.3 million that we find in July, greater than expected. Those go up and down. And number two, that is the first time that it has happened since I have been here in the district, is that health benefits actually stay flat. We were projecting a 10% increase. We actually received a notice there was going to be a 14% increase. However, we get a pass, meaning that the benefits did not increase for HealthNet from January to June. So the other items is what we call is carry forward or carry over funds. And the graders that you can see that is the Common Core standard funds, about $7.8 million. So what happens here is we receive an award letter of the state. You have these available funds to spend. You have 2 years to spend it. And we could spend it all in 13-14, but we discussed, it's a plan. So we waited to spend the rest until 2014-15. So this is the carryover funds. This is just happens. The budget is movement. It's never static. Things change from week to month. So how is this compared to prior years? So this line is actually, Mr. Banda asked me, how can you put a dayline what has happened on the year? And what is surprised, you can see this, even in our worst economic year in 1910, we did have carryover funds. We have one-time funds, federal jobs, and American Recovery Reinvestment Act funds that we received that in late 1910. And those funds saved us for the years 2010 and 11. And even though we have major cuts in those years, they were not as, could be even worse had we not received these funds. So I was thinking about like in your personal finance, assuming like we have a friend who finally paid us in the middle of the month. We see that we all have our expenditures covered. So we could either, when we have the funds, we could spend it on that month, or we can plan it and spend it until next month or 2 months down the road. So we have, this is where we are. I want to take a minute to say, yes, we need to spend our funds in our today's students. Yes, we need to do that, but not at the expense of tomorrow's students. We need to create a balance. We need to create a balance between how we spend our funds. And this has been a good year, but we need to be prudent with our funding. If we spend all our funds all at once, We know there's a cyclical in the state. We depend so much on the state. For instance, what's going to happen when Proposition 30 goes away? They're just two years down the road. By the way, we have about 38.7 million from there. So we need to create about a balance. We need to learn from the mistakes. Like in the past year, how we have a better balance, fund balance, our costs will not be as severe. At this point, I'm open up for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. Do I have any questions or comments? Okay, then, sorry, Diana. Member Rodriguez.
Thank you. And first, I want to begin with by thanking Mr. Castillo. You have been very good at stepping in and explaining all of these scenarios to us. And just kind of want to lead off by telling you that I've been receiving a lot of positive comments about you and the transparency that you provide to our parents in the district who are looking at the budget. So thank you very much for your time and your knowledge that you're sharing with them. So thank you for that. Wanted to bring this forward because there was a question from the community that talked about the excess or the difference of an excess budget and a deficit budget, which we had been operating under, the differences between restricted and unrestricted funds. And of course, you know, the famous thing that I had been bringing up the whole time is where we stored that money at which was if I recall correctly, the 4390 account. So, you know, I understand that whole concept of making sure we're budgeting and not at the expense of tomorrow's children. But, you know, the reality is in today's environment in the classroom, we do see needs. So how do you see the balance striking out?
And actually, it's, you know, we have a process that I think is very good here in Sac City, where we call it like one-stop staffing, where we meet with our principals in the middle of the years. We meet in December. We start in December and January, where we work for their next year budgets, but we also review their budgets at that point in time. So we tell them, you know, we are in the middle of the year, this is where you are. We want them to spend the funds. You know, once we give it to the school size, you know, or the department location, they are there to serve the students. There's some balance. Sometimes they know they have a plan. Sometimes they say, yeah, I know I have this, you will see here a QIA money, but I want to save it because I want to, I have an additional counselor for next year. So we have this flexibility. We reviewed us. There is, could we do better? We are looking at different systems, different financial systems to provide more up-to-date data, but we have this with this process. Once the funds are there, we want them to spend it, and we have some carryover. You know, by law, we cannot carry more than 15% in federal funds and Title I, so the law already protects us from that. You know, we need to do that, otherwise we will come to you and ask you for a waiver, send it for the state. We are not there. You know, 5%, 20 million sounds like a lot, but it's when you put in a percentage and a 400 million budget, it's not a lot, but I mean, our principals had the discretion once the funds are there, the school size is the money to spend.
If you look at the slide on, oh, you don't have a number. Why an increase in fund balance slide? The carryover funds that are listed here, those are all restricted funds.
And yes, I want to say the economic impact aid, those were restricted. Now they are unrestricted because of the LGFF funds. You know, when we adopt a budget, when we put it there, they were restricted. And that's what I said the word formally economic, because that does not exist anymore. So besides that, all the other ones are restricted.
Okay. So we can see the majority of that $22 million is pretty restricted. So it can't be used for other purposes than what is listed here.
For this ones right here, that's correct. You know, the donations too, the one, the 900, it's actually on the unrestricted column, but it's a school by school, that's donations that the school receives, they work hard, and that's carry over. So that is unrestricted, but we cannot touch it, it's the school funds. The donor gave it for a purpose for the school, so that's their money.
Okay. I thank you very much for your answers today and for your presentation, and hopefully it answers the questions that others had as well that are either watching today or here in the audience. So, and I get some nods from the audience. Yeah, I think you're doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Castillo. See no more comments or questions. I entertain a motion.
I move to approve it.
Member Rodriguez, a second from Vice President Pritchett. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9.1, approve Board Resolution Number 2812, resolution opposing shooting range in the immediate proximity of George Washington Carver School of Arts and Science. I understand that this is a very controversial and heated issue, and just for the record, I'd like to ask the audience indulgence and please act with appropriate decorum. Superintendent.
Well, this item is here because, as you know, and it's been played out in the media somewhat, but next to one of our schools, there's a proposal, or actually it's beyond a proposal, where a gun club will be going in next to one of our schools. And so there's been some ongoing discussions with the city council because it is within the boundaries of Folsom Cordova, and so we have been having these conversations, or Rancho Cordova, excuse me, and we have been having some conversations with some of the city council regarding this issue because, it's not only a concern for the school board, but it's definitely been a concern for our parents, our students, and community. And so I just want to acknowledge their willingness to be able to sit down and have those conversations to see what happened. Is there anything we can do to address it, either to eliminate the possibility of that, and if that's not in a legal avenue we can take, then what can we do together to help mitigate some of those potential risks that are involved with that kind of facility. So I think tonight we do have some representatives from Rancho Cordova who are here to make a statement about that issue. And then again, there is this resolution that the board has crafted that just wants to go on the record to say that we don't think that this is an acceptable placement for this type of a business, especially next to a school, and that we want to make sure that we go on record to show that it's not acceptable, but given the circumstances, how can we work together to, again, either mitigate or to work on some kind of resolutions to address and allay some of those concerns, some of those fears that are out there in the community, and also to educate. Because I think one of the comments that was made by one of our board members in that meeting was, there's not any information out there. So people are kind of filling in the gaps. We don't know exactly what it is and what's the intention and what are the precautions, what are the safety measures, what are the possibilities for us working together moving forward. So tonight, we want to make sure that we have an opportunity to have the board express their concerns around this and then what possible actions we can take. And I think we're also going to allow the representatives from Folsom Cordova to come up and make a statement.
Rancho Cordova.
Rancho Cordova, sorry.
And so
I'm still learning the area here, so
That's
give me
right.
a little leeway.
At least you didn't say Seattle.
True.
With that, I'd like to invite Assistant City Manager, City of Rancho Cordova, Joe Chin, to the dais. Welcome, Mr. Chin.
Thank you. Good evening, Board President Wu and members of the board. I'm Joe Chin, Assistant City Manager with the City of Rancho Cordova. I'd like to read into the record a letter that hopefully is on your dais from the City Manager, Brian Nakamura. On behalf of the Rancho Cordova City Council, I wish to address the Sacramento City Unified School District Board of Education's item pertaining to resolution number 2812 and the board's contemplation and consideration of its approval. Specifically, resolution number 2812 calls for City of Rancho Cordova to relocate the shooting range under construction at 3443 Routier Road, which it is unable to do at this time. I am confident that the Sacramento City Unified Board of Education trustees are keenly aware that the City Council and its staff care deeply about its residents, school, children, families, and businesses. It is these elements that make for great communities, and we rely upon collaboration and cooperation among our partners to ensure that the City of Rancho Cordova continues to thrive socially, educationally, and economically. That said, there are instances where differing business and land uses may appear to be incompatible and incongruent. In this particular instance, the city's planning department determined that the indoor shooting range in question is an allowed use for this site. The site is zoned for office industrial mixed use and allows for indoor entertainment, such as an indoor shooting range. Because this use is allowed by right, no discretionary action is taken by the City Council on the matter, and no notice is required to be given to adjacent property owners. So long as the application obtains the required permits and follows the laws, they may locate their business at this location. The business has obtained a building permit and a business license. Our city attorney's office has advised me that under these circumstances, even if the City Council had intervened in this matter, it would have been very difficult, if not legally impossible, to stop the permitted use. Although California's Gun-Free School Zone Act generally prohibits guns within 1,000 feet of schools, it contains an exemption for businesses on private property when they comply with gun laws. After learning that the business was underway, City Council directed city staff to research possible amendments to the zoning code related to this type of use, which will be discussed in the coming months. These may include noticing and permit requirements. All legal options will be explored. The business owners have made it clear to the city that all club members and visitors will be expected to follow California laws related to gun safety. Such laws include a requirement that guns are to be kept unloaded and in a locked container when they are transported from one place to another. I have also been informed that the construction of this business involves extensive noise mitigation and security measures, and that the owners will comply with any and all applicable state and federal regulations related to the use. I can assure you that the city will promptly respond to any complaints or concerns related to the business. Health and safety of the public is our top priority. Sincerely, Brian McNamara, City Manager. In the board resolution before you that calls for the relocation, quite frankly, is not possible legally. So that is not an option that's on the table. We do wish, as the superintendent said, to continue to meet with either have our city council and board members and the superintendent and city manager meet to find the best solutions for the situation. So we respectfully want to continue working and find the best solutions in this circumstance, but it is not possible to relocate this legally, so it is allowed use.
Thank you.
If there's any questions, and also with me is Paul Yonker, the city planning director. So if there's any questions for us at this time, or either myself or Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chin. I think before we take questions from my colleagues on the dais, I think members of the public would like to say a few words, so I'm going to allow them to make their comment as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 4 comments on this item. If folks can please line up behind the podium in the order you're called. Rusha Powers, Nina Saperstein, Ralph Merletti, and Alex Visaya Jr.
Good evening, President Wu, Vice President Pritchett, and Superintendent Bonda and board members. My name is Rusha Powers, and I'm first and foremost here tonight to thank you for your pending approval of Resolution 2812 opposing the immediate proximity of the shooting range to Carver High School. Your statement, as it was written on the website, is direct, clear-minded, and demonstrates your absolute commitment to the safety of SCUSD students. After weeks of trying to untangle policies and procedures of local government, which just make no sense, your resolution was a breath of fresh, rational air. I applaud you for your unequivocal stance and for being brave enough to stand up for what is right over what is legally allowed. Tonight, I'm proud to have you as my Board of Trustees. I also want to take this moment to ask you to please apply all your powers and options in making sure that the Sacramento Gun Club does not open its doors in the next several weeks as they are advertising. It feels as if time is of the essence. From a taxpayer's point of view, if Fight Development can sue and win against our district, as they did when Carver first moved onto the campus, claiming potential economic degradation to their property from the adolescents on the neighboring property, then why can't the district countersue for the negative economic impact on the program at Carver through potential attrition and compromised safety of the environment? I'm not a lawyer, but if they had a case, surely we have a case. Similarly at issue are the old maps used in the Rancho Cordova Planning Department, which apparently showed only the business park in this area and neither of our SCUSD school sites. Is this not dereliction of duty? How can our students be fairly represented or considered in Rancho city plans if we aren't even on their map? I trust that the board will swiftly and thoroughly investigate all these aspects and take action where necessary. Thank you for hearing my comments, and thank you again for your excellent work on the resolution.
Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Bonda and board members. My name is Nina Saperstein, and I am a senior at George Washington Carver High School. I voiced my concerns and the concerns of my fellow schoolmates at a recent school board meeting regarding the Sacramento Gun Club opening right next to our school. On behalf of everyone at Carver, thank you for your resolution requesting that the gun club move to a different location. Thank you for acknowledging the unnecessary risk of harm posed by the proximity of the gun club to our school. Thank you for making our safety and learning a high priority. It gives us great peace of mind to know we can count on your continued leadership to protect us from the possibility of physical and psychological harm posed by the location of this gun club. Thank you for your support.
Thank you.
Once again, good evening. I'm Ralph Merletti, and I wish to go on record as supporting the board's resolution 2812 on this matter. The questions I have, overall for the situation, why wasn't the board, why wasn't the area and the school given earlier notification and clear notification? These days, you just can't be too careful when dealing with matters of gun and firearm safety. Now, why couldn't they have located further away from the school, even if it is zoned industrial? So there's a lot of questions about this, and it really needs to be located further out as much as possible. And so once again, I'm on record as supporting the board's resolution on this. As I say again, you just cannot be too careful when dealing with gun safety when in these days, the way things are going. So I ask the company involved to please, and the people involved with this to please consider the possibilities of what can be done to make things more safe. I hope that they can move, but even if they can't, can they please do something about this? This is not good, located near a school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Distinguished board, cabinet, and staff, President Wu, Senior Banda, Superintendent. My name is Alex Visaya, parent and student advocate of this district. Just one word that should touch our hearts for this particular issue in front of you. It's called safety, safety, safety for the kids. And I believe that they can move somewhere else to make sure that we protect our kids. They belong to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez.
Oh, I didn't realize I was the first one. Thank you, President Wu. So, I'm a former employee of a planning department, not here locally, in the Central Coast area. So I, more than anyone else, understand the process of conditional use permits or use permits, discretionary, non-discretionary. I do understand that process and the back part of it. But I think it's a level of discernment that needs to take place, with staff as well as the property owner. It's a matter of respect for vulnerable persons in our community. Just because old maps were used to make a decision onto whether the city of Rancho Cordova would allow for a use permit at this location, I put a lot of the responsibility upon the property owner. The property owner did understand and know and have knowledge of that there was a school directly next door to his property. I think of all of this situation, that is what concerns me the most, is that we have members in our society that really just are absent thinking of our safety and the protection of our most vulnerable persons in our community. That's our children. And that's what worries me about this situation. Thank you.
Member Arroyo.
Thank you, President Wu. I cannot thank enough staff for their prompt work in producing the resolution that we have before us. And I would like to request that we pass this resolution as is. I think that we need to ask for the owner and the city to come up with a plan for a relocation plan. I'm not against guns. I'm not against a gun range. What I'm against is guns in a gun range next to a school. And I think that it defies common sense. And for those very simple reasons, I would like to ask that a plan be considered for relocation. And I know that there are legal issues that, we cannot tell the city how to act, or, we don't have legal recourse per se, but we do have an obligation to request that they find an option to this issue. They imposed it on us. We didn't post it on them. And this resolution speaks clearly and loudly to what the children and the families need in this district. So with that, I ask that we adopt the resolution as is.
Thank you. Member Hanson? Oh, I'm sorry. Vice President Pritchett.
I can see your board.
Number one is your high priority.
Thank you, President Wu.
First off, I just wanted to thank the parents and community members for the overwhelming responses that I got in response to this gun club that's opening up next year's school. It was very eye-opening and heartfelt to me. I wanted to also thank Mr. Chin and the City Council for the time that you took with our board on Tuesday, or with our executive committee and superintendent, speaking with us in regard to the gun range, and hoping that we can move forward with some community meetings as promised, and getting out the word. And I did overlook the letter that you guys submitted in the fact sheet, and I'm really looking forward to be able to get this out to our community so that they can understand. That being said, I do appreciate that you are looking into the future and hoping that this could never happen to one of our schools again. But that does not protect our students now. It does not protect the students of George Washington Carver when this gun range opens. So it is our job as a school board trustees to take a hard stance to protect our students and make sure that they are safe when they're at school, as it is your job to run your city efficiently. So tonight, I am encouraging each and every one of our board members to pass this resolution as is, and to protect our students and do what's right for George Washington Carver.
Vice President Hansen.
Thank you. I did have a question for our guests, if I'd be able to ask a question, please. I was concerned with one of the folks who came up and testified that our school wasn't on the city's planning documents. Is that correct?
I'm going to have Paul Yunker, the planning director.
Trustee Hansen, Paul Yunker, planning director. No, your school is on our maps. We actually had an executive team meeting at George Washington Carver, and it's a wonderful campus. The zoning maps identify the zoning of the property as office industrial mixed use. There's not a different zoning for schools. So it's not that the maps are out of date. The zoning maps do not identify schools per se.
So the department did know that there was a school there when they were making the decision to allow the facility to move forward?
Yes, we did. This was a matter of, is it allowed use? And the property owners adjacent to and within the industrial district owned that building, and they sought to have that use.
Thanks. I was also concerned that, and this is just what I read in the paper, so you can correct me if I am mistaken, that the city didn't feel that it was required to tell adjacent property owners, a school district, of this facility.
We've used the word required because oftentimes we talk about what is the required noticing. It's also a question of what's appropriate. Noticing is appropriate when there's a question at issue of can we proceed. Being an allowed use, that's why no noticing did occur. So there was no process to go through hearings, and when there's no process for hearings, there's no noticing as my world defines noticing.
No noticing is required, but it may have been appropriate.
At this point, I would not disagree that we could have had more discussions. I'm not sure that it would have made any difference at all because a property owner who has owned a building for a long time, predating the school by years, sought to use that building for a legal use. So we could have talked about it, and we still can. And the property owner, I believe, is still very interested in making sure that this facility will operate in a way that poses no physical hazard to the students of George Washington Carver. And I think we're going to also look for ways that we can build a relationship that the anxiety that's felt, even if there is no physical danger, there's anxiety, and I think we have some work to do there.
I appreciate hearing the comments from my fellow board member Pritchett and our superintendent about the cooperative meeting that was held with the city. So I certainly appreciate that, and I certainly hope that there's some things that we can do moving forward
I certainly will be supporting the resolution this evening as well. We know what the best case scenario is, and that's not to have the facility there. I hope that will be the goal, and I hope that we continue working towards that. And I appreciate you coming here this evening and being straightforward with us. Thank you.
Member Cuneo.
Thank you, President Wu. I just wanted to take a moment to just say that I've really valued Vice President Pritchett's leadership on this issue. I think that she brought this to our attention in a timely manner. She's reached out to her community. She's done everything that you want in an elected school board member. She's reached out to the city of Rancho Cordova and kept that dialogue open so that maybe there can be some mitigation or hope in the future that there can be measures taken that will kind of help ease what's going on here. So I want to congratulate her on her leadership. And then the second thing is I understand, and I think we've been very upfront, and the city has been very upfront as well, that legally we don't really have a lot of options as a school board. But I think there are times as school board members and as a school board that you can be crystal clear morally, and I think this calls for one of those times. And that's why I am going to be supporting this resolution. I am hopeful, given the lack of legal action we can take, that some sort of compromise can occur. And I would be very supportive of continued dialogue between the district, the school site, and the city to try to find whatever kind of resolution that would help George Washington Carver continue to thrive as a great Waldorf institution, and would make the students, staff, and faculty feel safe at their school site. And just I've always been impressed with the school, so that's why I'll be supporting this resolution tonight.
Student Member Saito.
When I first heard of the shooting range opening up just literally right next door to Carver, I was shocked and almost horrified, to be honest. I have many close friends that attend Carver presently at the moment, and, well, I texted them as soon as I heard about it, and they said, well, frankly, I'm scared. It's a terrifying thought to really think that something with such violence in a way is right there while you're supposed to be sitting in school where it's supposed to be safe. School is supposed to be a safe learning environment for students. And if there's a gun range right next door, personally, I wouldn't feel safe. I wouldn't want to go to school if there's something right there, right at my doorstep, something that doesn't make me feel safe. Thank you.
Vice President Pritchett.
Thank you, Student Member Said. I really do appreciate that. And that, as you can see, that's been the response from many of our students and why we are on such high alert. I did just want to get some clarification from you two. In your comments earlier, can you just reiterate about a meeting that was held at George Washington Carver that you mentioned?
The executive team of the city of Rancho Cordova travels around the city and holds many meetings at many businesses and public institutions. This meeting was probably 3 years ago or so. And it's just a matter of course. We have them in libraries, we have them in schools, we have them in different businesses. We were not there to meet with the school. We were there to learn about the school.
Okay. And then also, Councilmember Dave Sander had visited the school recently in wake of what was happening to go and speak with the principal. It's my understanding that he had expressed that they were looking at old maps and that the school was not on the map. And I know that we had spoke about that in our meeting that we had on Tuesday. But you're saying that they did see a school, and you're sure about that?
Well, yes, my staff, and we have many maps. We have maps that identify zoning, general plan designations. We also have maps that identify uses, and we also rely on things like Google Earth. So we do look at the uses. So
Okay.
I'm not sure what Councilmember Sandra was referring to in that case.
I hope you can understand the frustration because we get information from one source and then we get information from another, and it just doesn't match. And that seems to be the issue overall. So I'm really hoping that we can work together and get to the bottom of it, of how exactly this came about. And I know that when we met with the staff on Tuesday, they said they were also going to pull the permit and look to see exactly how it was put on the permit by Fight Development, because it is my understanding that they put it as an indoor recreation area.
No,
That's not
no,
true.
ma'am. I personally looked at both the business license and the building permit application. In both cases, it listed a gun range. It listed the uses I believed as gun educational programs, sales, and gun range. And that was very consistently disclosed. There was no, the Fight did not in any way hide the intended use. The real debate was a matter of what is the use and how to classify it, and looking at a use that's entirely enclosed within a building. At the time, we actually had 2 gun ranges that had been discussed with staff, and that determination had been reached by a team of departments within the city.
And this was approved by the planning department and didn't go to the city council.
That's correct. What many people are unaware of is most businesses do not ever get to the city council. Most businesses go into a district where they are allowed by right, and then we go through a process of business licenses and building permits, which is what occurred in this case. It's the unusual business that requires a special conditional use permit or rezoning or something in order to locate a location.
Okay, well, so in addition to the community meetings and informational meetings that we are planning, I would like to have some off-site meetings with you guys to go over the documents. That way I can answer my community when they ask me questions.
Yeah, I already have those, and they were part of what helped to build the process timeline that's in your packet. I think at some point, and I've encouraged the owners, Fight Development, to conduct some tours of the facility, because I got to tell you, I'm not a gun owner, and I haven't ever been to a shooting range before this one, and it was truly eye-opening. And I think that as members of the public and members of the board are able to visit it and understand a little bit more of what this place is and what it isn't, I think that some of the anxiety will be relieved. Not all of it, by any means. There's a deep concern in our country about gun ownership and gun violence, and it transcends our board and city.
That is very true, and I can say that even the Sacramento Bee quoted me today that I am not against guns or gun ranges or business growth, because I would really love to see Rancho Cordova grow with the empty buildings that are taking place. But as Member Arroyo stated earlier, I'm truly against having this range right next to our school. So I appreciate it, your time, and I look forward to future meetings with you.
And understanding we look forward to having the meetings and discussions and finding the best outcome. Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Member Arroyo.
Sorry, if you can please stay good. Don't go away. And just to your very previous comment, I think that the concern is not about gun ownership. I mean, my family has long history of, gun ownership, and it's perfectly fine. I think it's, again, the issue of guns with such proximity to a school. The question that I have for you is, I know that it has been said that the legal recourse is not there, but I don't think that there's only legal recourse here. Legal is if we want to sue or we want to pursue, but nothing prevents the city and the owners to reach an agreement to which a relocation could be possible, correct?
That's correct, but there's a very large financial stake involved.
Okay, so, and therein my next point. So the owners in the city have put all 3 stakeholders into one single spot where somebody's going to lose money. So they're going to be the district because of lost ADA, or it's going to be the city for helping a relocation, or it's going to be the owner, right? So if the city or if the owner continues to open the locale, then it's the district that will lose ADA. Every student's about $7,000-8,000. So when you have 10, you're talking about close to 100,000. 100 kids is, you can multiply. So there is a direct financial impact to one of the three. And so if the school was there already, why only look at the parameter that it needs to be legal to force a relocation and not a agreement between the city that allowed for the gun range to be there and the owner?
At this point, it's been estimated that the improvements of the gun range represent $6 million. It's also a building that has been owned by Fight Development for many years. It had stood vacant for 6 years. They had sought tenants. They had lost tenants because they chose not to locate next to the school. They recently lost the Bureau of Automotive Affairs because they were concerned about being close to the school. It's interesting how various uses impact one another. This being an industrial zone, Fight chose to use the building in a way that now has caused great concern, and I wouldn't diminish that for a minute. I can't imagine that the city could undertake the $6 million in damages plus whatever lost revenues and whatever that would amount to in order to bring about the relocation of the gun range. It doesn't seem like that's a credible outcome to me. You can certainly discuss that with the council, but that's the order of magnitude. We're probably talking well in excess of $6 million.
So at this point, we're talking money versus students. That's kind of like the paradigm that we on the board are pretty much being put on.
I really look forward to a discussion where we can better understand the risks and the concerns, and we can possibly address what are perceived as physical risks. And I think part of that is a visitation to the facility. Once it's at a point of completeness, the operators are concerned with the level of construction now and having a lot of people in the facility. But I think once you come to understand the nature of this facility, you'll realize that the operation of the range is not the hazard, it's society in general. And I'm not sure that that range changes the fact that there are people who do terrible things in this world. I don't think the gun range creates those people. And I don't think that the people who will use a very sophisticated, highly regulated gun range will be those people that would commit terrible acts. And we may need to try to separate those two.
Yes, and that is an assumption, right? And I'm not here to stereotype anyone, and I'm not trying to generalize on anyone for that matter, right? I'm not even going there because I really don't want to generalize the fact that, someone, because they own a gun, they're a bad person. Not at all. It's just the circumstance of high traffic guns right next to a school that I would ask anyone with children, not only in this district, but anywhere, their level of comfort with their kids being next to, And so I would expect the same of the families and students that are here, the parents, as, anyone else on the board and in the district. So my issue is not with the gun owners whatsoever. My issue is not with a gun range whatsoever, or the sophistication or any safeties that they have, is the location of. And does a property owner have other properties within the region?
Fight Development has extensive ownerships. I'm not aware of what specific buildings they own, but they've been in the community for,
so it's not like
I
the owner
believe,
has
30
only
years.
one facility, right? But they chose that one. And so my point is that there are options, and that the people affected here are not a property owner or a city. The people affected here are students. And if we have something to say up here, it will always be with students first in mind. And so I would encourage not only the passage of this resolution, but more than ever, to really encourage for a resolution that includes a relocation. And the dialogue can go wherever it needs to go. But I think that the gun range came to us more than anything, not we to them. And so I would like to remind the board of that and the community as well. Thank you.
Excuse me, Member Rodriguez.
Yes, back. I have a very simple question. So obviously I heard you saying that you had some lessons learned in this process. Would I be assuming correctly that you're going to be making some corrective modifications to some of your procedures? And if you are going to be making some corrective modifications to your procedures, will this board be notified as you're going through the process and keeping us included in that dialogue, and then which corrective procedures you're implementing?
The City Council has already asked that we review the regulations associated with this type of use, and we will absolutely inform you of that. Those changes would be going forward. They wouldn't be retroactive to an existing use, but we now more than ever understand the sensitivity that's felt by this board, by these parents, and by the folks at the school, and that will be part of the dialogue. I anticipate there will be changes to our zoning code as a result of this.
Thank you.
Vice President Hansen.
Call the question.
Don't I get to make comment? Yes, I do. I too want to thank Vice President Pritchett for taking the leadership on this and bringing this to the attention of this board. And I also appreciate the difficulty that the task of the city of Rancho Cordova have. Like Member Rodriguez, I too served in the planning. I served 6 years on the Sacramento City Planning Commission, and I was involved in the 2030 General Plan and its creation. And it's very, very difficult to anticipate every situation that will arise in trying to create a vision of the future for your city. But having said that, a gun club, a shooting range, whatever you want to call it, immediately adjacent to to a high school, immediately adjacent to some of the most vulnerable citizens of our community, requires this board to take a stance. And it is a moral imperative that we have to take a stance to address this issue. And I think that you heard clearly from my colleagues up on the board. I appreciate your willingness to come to talk to us today. But I'm hoping that our position today, resolution that we will be voting on, will create a dialogue that will continue on so that we can make sure that the parents, the teachers, the students in particular, feel safe attending George Washington Carver. So with that, I will call the question. Yes.
A motion that we, is my microphone on? I would like to send a motion that we pass Resolution 2812.
Okay, I have a motion from First Vice President Pritchett with a second from Second Vice President Hansen. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 9.2, revision of Board Policy 6142.7, physical education.
Good evening, Board President Wu, Superintendent Banda, and members of the board. My name is Iris Taylor, the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, and I'm joined tonight by Heather Deckard, our Physical Education Coordinator. Okay.
Is this down on batteries or something?
Tonight we're here to present proposed revisions to Board Policy 6142.7, Physical Education. We will share with you the history of recent changes to state standards and curricular frameworks in physical education and newly updated district policies that warrant the change. We will outline specific details regarding the proposed changes. In addition, we will inform you of two special cases impacting the awarding of physical education in order to receive direction from the board to determine our next steps. In 2004 was the last time Board Policy 6142.7 was updated. Since that time, the state of California has adopted physical educational model content standards in 2005, and a new education framework, physical education framework, was adopted in 2008. These documents provide guidance regarding curricular and instructional content and explicitly outline what students should know, understand, and be able to do as a result of a physical education program. In addition, in 2012, the board adopted a revision to Board Policy 5030, Student Wellness. This policy included physical education, and due to these changes, the district began reviewing Board Policy 6142.7 for physical education. This occurred during the 2012-13 school year, and was done in order to provide some consistency between the policies. In August of 2013, we brought a revised Board Policy 6142.7 to the board for a first reading. We return tonight to provide further information about the proposed changes. The next section will be presented by Heather Deckert, who will focus on the changes.
Thank you. The proposed changes to the policy allow for alignment of the 2005 California Physical Education Standards. The course of study for high school, which encompasses the 8 components of physical education, such as the mechanics of body movement, aquatics, gymnastics, and tumbling. In addition, we've added MVPA because the promotion of moderate to vigorous physical activity is increasingly seen in the field of physical education as a critical component to an effective physical education program. The new policy has additions such as description of physical education for students with disabilities, including alignment to IEPs, 504 plans, as well as accommodations and modifications on the physical fitness test in accordance with Ed Code. We've added the required physical education minutes for clarity purposes to ensure compliance with state law. We field the questions about the minute requirements every year and want to make sure it is very clear what the requirements are according to state law. The new policy spells out the requirements for the testing window, as well as what is considered passing for high school students in order to qualify for a 2-year exemption in physical education. California is a 4-year physical education state, and students must qualify for a 2-year exemption. The policy also clarifies reporting requirements. The new policy clearly defines each exemption. The athletic exemption aligns language across various board policies, such as athletic competition. The 2-year exemption explicitly outlines what qualifies a student for a 2-year exemption, as well as elective physical education courses for exempted students. The grade 12 exemption was added to provide additional options for students. When revising this policy, we met with students, parents, administrators, the Physical Education Steering Committee, members of the Academic Office, the Family and Community Engagement Department, the Health Education Council, California Project Lean, and the Alliance for Healthier Generation. These stakeholders recommended that the following exemptions be removed. The exemption for students 16 years or older who have been in grade 10 for one or more academic years be removed because a student's age does not impact the ability to meet the physical education requirements. The exemption for students enrolled as a postgraduate student be removed due to ambiguity. Students who are postgraduates have met the physical education graduation requirement and would not require an exemption. Dr. Taylor will now share with you two special cases.
There are two special cases. Where the state of California has made it a local decision to determine if PE credit can be awarded for courses in special programs. In August of 2014, the California Teaching Commission recognized a special teaching authorization for JROTC instructors who hold a designated special subjects credential to demonstrate meeting a higher standard of subject matter competence in PE through passing the CSET or PE subject matter program. For students to be awarded with physical education for JROTC, the course must also meet the following requirements. JROTC teachers can teach PE in the context of a JROTC or basic military drill course that has been approved by the local school board to award PE credit. The course must adhere to the California Physical Education Standards and the eight components of physical education and be approved by the board. The course content must include instruction in physical education for 400 minutes and every 10 days. The course of study must meet the objectives and criteria for physical education according to the law, which lists the 8 physical education content areas required for physical education program credit. Then finally, JROTC teachers or instructors will be responsible for the annual physical fitness testing. The second case is awarding physical education credit for marching band. In order for students to receive physical education credit for marching band, the following criteria must be met. The instructor must have a dual credential in marching band and physical education unless there's variance by a committee of assignments who awards special dispensation for teachers who do not hold those credentials. The state requires 400 minutes every 10 school days for physical education at the secondary level, and this is exclusive of any marching band course content. Marching band instructors must adhere to the California Physical Education Standards, and the course of study must meet the objectives and criteria for physical education according to the law. Finally, marching band instructors will also be responsible for administering the physical fitness testing. Our next steps are to include presenting the proposed revision of Policy 6142.7 to the board for a second reading, including revisions that may result from the direction the board provides regarding physical education credit for JROTC and marching band. Upon approval, we will develop the educational administrative regulations for the policy. We'll take public comment and answer questions.
Thank you. Mr. Ross.
We have 3 public comments on this item from Kirsten Brown, Jamie Brown, and Terrence Gladney.
Good evening. My name is Kirsten Brown, and I'm currently a junior at Rosemont High School. When I started going to Rosemont, I went in there with a plan. This was an academic plan that involved marching band, counting for my PE credits. And I counted that as a promise made to me by my counselor. And with this plan, I don't really have time to take out a class or to take PE, since the marching band requirements are going to change. And we were told that my school doesn't count for that anymore. And currently as a junior, I'm taking 3 AP classes out of my core classes, along with a music elective and marching band. As a senior, I plan on taking 5 AP classes along with my music elective and marching band. And after high school, I want to go to university and double major in psychology and music, so I don't think it's realistic for me to drop my music elective to be able to have to take PE so that I can fulfill my graduation requirements. So my question is, what class are you guys asking me to drop so that I can take PE to fulfill this graduation requirement? Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jamie Brown, and I'm the proud parent of the lady who just spoke to you. As a parent at Rosemont, I too heard that promise that 4 years of marching band would satisfy the PE requirement. My wife and I are also graduates of Hiram Johnson and received the same thing from their Jay ROTC program many years ago. There are a couple of things I want to clarify that seem to be misrepresented. First of all, Education Code 44258.7 specifically talks about the fact that PE is an elective. It is not a core class as designated under No Child Left Behind. Anybody with any single subject or multi-subject credential with proper training can teach a PE class. By the way, I have credentials in math and science, and I can be called upon to actually teach PE. I've asked my administrators not to. Secondly, though, there's reference in this PowerPoint about the 8 core issues, aquatics and what have you. The state law requires that the curriculum addresses those 8 areas, not every single PE class. So the idea that marching band doesn't teach aquatics, therefore can't be a PE class, is just ridiculous. There is easily an opportunity to supplement the marching band requirements with an additional class. Now, I do understand that the requirements put forth in 2005 and then again in 2008 preclude my daughter from taking all marching band and that satisfy the requirements. However, there's nothing that precludes the district, the curriculum development team, whatever, from making a single 5-unit class that addresses those and allowing marching band to count for the other 15. The other thing I want to address is that the timing seems kind of interesting. The standards went into effect 2005. They were updated in 2008. That's 6 years ago. My understanding is that all of a sudden this is an issue because we failed an audit 2 years ago and that we knew that. I also am under the impression that the administration at Rosemont was advised the policy is changing over the summer. As we're here tonight, apparently it hasn't yet. So I'm kind of wondering, why are we pushing forward with policy that hasn't changed? Why are we telling the schools that the policy hasn't changed? And is administration usurping this board's authority? Finally, the state law allows for an easy fix to this. Change the requirements. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But for my daughter and those that are juniors that were promised this, there's an easy fix. She's over 16. She has passed the 10th grade, and the state law says you can exempt her. Now, I addressed this with Dr. Taylor, and it's interesting. 5 days later, according to this note, there was an email between these two that said, we're going to drop that from the board policy. Well, first of all, it's an option you don't have to exercise anyway. Second of all, if you drop it from the board policy, it's still state law. You can still fix this. Thank you.
Good evening, Terrence Gladney. I'm a parent of a junior at Kennedy, and I remember a couple years ago when the policy was presented, I had concerns around the athletic exemption component because state law said that it could be exempted, and I believe at that time it was looked at as being pulled from the board policy. So I don't understand how our local policy could supersede the state policy. I do see that that's changed, but I remember my son took PE in 9th grade, and he played 2 sports, so he should have really been able to take electives that year. I know other freshmen that had already been advised that they could exempt themselves out of PE. So there needs to be some consistency in our policies across the district, and that starts with accountability from the board. It's great to pass a policy, but if we don't have accountability at the local school site level, then we have some kids who will be using those freshman years to get additional A through G requirements fulfilled, and people like my son who have to take PE while also practicing, 5 hours a day sometime in the summer, 2 hours after school. As a freshman, they don't have access or priority in the gym, so sometimes 7:30 and 9:30 p.m. and sometimes later. So what is the priority? What is the precedence, that we have set? Is it academics? I believe in the whole child, and PE is definitely a strong component of that. We have the ability to integrate some of the requirements, such as nutritional education, into the things that they're doing outside of the classroom, whether it's ROTC or sports. I believe that a lot of coaches could use some additional education on nutritional advisement and how they educate their players and athletes around that. That's one way we can do it. When I was in high school, I never took PE because I was an athlete all 4 years. I also know there was a catalyst for my academic performance and excellence. The 1 year that I didn't play sports, which is, the one semester I didn't in my senior year, was when I had my worst grades, because it helps with my time management. It helped me be a more complete person. I know that now as an adult, the days I work out early, it drives me to be a better person at work. So I look forward to you guys looking at creative ways outside the box besides the letter of the law. Let's be creative and be collaborative, include parents, students, and all stakeholders, that we have a complete policy that speaks to the whole child. Thank you.
We have one final comment on this item from Maria Haro Sullivan.
Good evening, Board. Good evening, President Wu and Superintendent Banda and board members. I'm newly a freshman, a parent of a freshman, so this whole PE thing is brand new to me. But I also wanted to say, as president of the DAC, it would have been nice if this came to the DAC, because then you could have gotten parent input for the board policy, because we do have high school parents who are there who would have liked to have some input on this. And I'll take this to the DAC, but it's probably a little late now. But anyways, as a parent of a freshman, I've got a freshman student who is at West Campus. He's in the new engineering program, and he's also in marching band. So there's no room in his schedule for PE. So I know that PE is one of the requirements, I was told, for freshman and sophomore. And he runs every day for 3 hours. This should be included as an exemption for him to not have to take a PE class, because honestly, I think he does more exercise after school and in marching band than he would in a PE class. So I would like clarification on what the actual rules are, and that needs to be spelled out to the parents, and it also needs to be spelled out to the school sites, because if we don't know what our kids are supposed to be doing, then how are we supposed to keep them accountable? So again, just like Terrence said, it needs to be accountability from board members all the way down to the school site and our kids, and we need to be informed. And I think that's the biggest issue that we have, is the parents aren't informed of what's going on. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Sullivan. Any further comments? Okay, Vice President Pritchett.
Ms. Deckard. Hello, Ms. Taylor. I was wondering if you could enlighten me a little bit about the exemptions.
Is there a specific one, or just would you like us to take us? I think all of them? Okay. So with the 2-year exemption, so as Heather said, California is a 4-year physical education state, but the state does allow a 2-year exemption after the freshman year. So students who are in 9th grade must take PE. If they pass the physical fitness test with 5 out of 6, they're able to be exempted from 2 years of physical education. So they just need to take that second year within the remaining 3 years. They can go 2 years and then take it their senior year. So 2 years of physical education is a graduation requirement and what the state requires. So that's the 2-year exemption. The athletic exemption that was just spoken about, it's an exemption for students who are in interscholastic athletic competition. It needs to be a district-sponsored athletic program. It needs to be taught by a credentialed teacher. It does not have to be a PE credentialed teacher, but it needs to be a credentialed teacher. And that allows students, as long as they're in an athletic competitive program, to be exempted from physical education. So the example that I would give is a student who plays football in the fall and continues in an athletic program throughout the school year can be exempted from physical education. It's if they do not continue with sports throughout the year that they then need to be placed in a regular physical education program.
Is that something new? Because I'm putting myself back to my son when he was at Rosemont High School. He played football for 4 years and he still had to take PE.
It's not new. I think what's not commonly understood is just some of the nuances in what the law requires. And so it is that the student must be enrolled in an competitive athletic program, school-sponsored, throughout the school year.
So just so I completely understand, because that was kind of confusing.
Okay.
If for marching band, you're saying that they could be exempt for their freshman and sophomore year, do PE their junior year, and then be exempt again their senior year? Is that?
No. The state
I figured I had that wrong.
Yeah,
So
the state does require that all 9th grade students take PE unless there's that exemption. Okay, so all 9th grade students have to take PE. If they pass the physical fitness test with 5 out of 6, then they're exempted for 2 years.
And Under that state law, is it possible for board members to extend the exemption for all grades if they're in some type of athletic sport or marching band or ROTC?
Yeah, so the ROTC and the marching band, and we call them special cases because they are indeed special cases. It is a local education agency's decision on whether or not marching band and JROTC count for physical education credit. It's not currently in our board policy, either one of those. And so that's part of the reason why we're here today, is just to get some direction on where we want to go with marching band and JROTC. With each of those, though, what is important to understand that if we award physical education credit for I'll just take marching band, for marching band, that the course content needs to meet certain requirements. So it needs to be aligned to the physical education standards. There are 8 components of physical education, and it's not that all those 8 components need to be in marching band, but over the course of a student's, the courses that a student takes in physical education, all 8 of those need to be covered. Okay, the physical fitness testing is a requirement, and the 400 minutes of physical education is still a requirement. So the challenge then becomes, how do you meet all of the physical education requirements and the marching band requirements in one course? I'll just say it's not an issue that we're facing alone. It's other districts. I contacted other districts in our local area just to find out, like, how are people addressing, how are different districts addressing this challenge, because it is a challenge, and none of our surrounding districts are offering marching band credit for physical education for some of the reasons that we've outlined.
So is it possible that, what would it take for a teacher to get credentialed, like say in marching band?
In marching band, so it's the course taking that they would need, they would need to have the subject matter, be able to prove that they have the subject matter competency in music. In the case of, if it's a PE teacher who's trying to get certified in marching band, or vice versa, the marching band teacher showing some subject matter competence in teaching physical education. Then the course of study for marching band would need to be changed and revised to reflect the physical education content and the marching band content, to show that those things are being covered within that course.
So since we have marching band instructors and we have PE instructors at each location, is it possible for like a cross-contamination in a sense of, for the PE teachers to come in and do like a class, or to make sure that that's being taken care of in the marching band world?
Are you talking about maybe an exchange where the marching band
or the teaching of it, or co-teaching?
It's possible. It would just require additional FTE, because you would need to hire another teacher. So the PE teacher currently has a course load. The marching band teacher currently has a course load. To do any sort of partner teaching, you'd have to cover the course that is not now being taught by the teacher. It just requires additional staffing, if I'm understanding your suggestion correctly.
So something to think about is that it's required that you have 400 minutes every 10 school days. If you break that down, most high school classes are about 50 minutes. So if we do 50 minutes each day times 5, that's 250 minutes. So if you break down the minutes of physical education to weeks, that would be 200 minutes every week. So really what it leaves marching band, it leaves one day, 50-minute class to teach marching band. The rest they are required to teach physical education for that 200 minutes in that week, so that they make the 400 minutes every 10 school days. So just something to think about.
The logistics of it it's challenging.
So, and you said that you've looked around to our neighboring districts and they're doing the same thing, because I've talked to some of the neighboring districts, and I don't know if I'm getting incorrect information, but they are saying that they are being able to offer this to their students. And
so I contacted people in similar positions as myself at an Elk Grove, San Juan, and Twin Rivers, and they're said that they do not offer marching band for physical. They do not offer physical education credit for marching band. What are we doing? Everyone's kind of trying to figure this one out.
How are they getting around it? They're just having marching band after school, or?
Some districts are doing it. They'll do a 0 period. There's a waiver, or opportunities for a waiver if there's a block scheduling. If a high school is on a block schedule, then there's ways to for students to get additional, the challenge that the student mentioned in terms of her schedule is so impacted that, to take physical education and still take marching band and all the AP courses, there are ways, because of the multiple opportunities for course taking in a block schedule, that's one way that districts are handling it.
Well, Superintendent, let's bring block scheduling.
We would love that, Superintendent.
We would. Right, so.
Member Rodriguez.
Thank you, President Wu. Okay, so one of the things that I noticed is the number of instructional minutes that is required to do this program. And the thing I didn't hear clearly, I was watching from the back because it was cold up here. The thing I didn't hear clearly, though, is did you say that this was already part of the curriculum, so they're already doing 200 minutes every 10 days, or is this something new that's being added in this policy?
No, this has been a state requirement for, I'm not sure when it began, but as long as physical education has been a requirement, the minutes has not changed. We are just trying to outline those minutes more explicitly, so it's communicated more broadly what that minute requirement is.
Okay. And then going, I mean, as a student myself that I participated in sports, I remember, and I was just telling the guys back there, I remember I hated it because I had to take PE, and the early part of my day and things that I didn't like, and then being on a sports team, I had to come back at the end of the day to do my sport activity. Just how it was when I was in school here for Sac City. Now, when I went to a different school, I was on the track team, and they put me at the end of the day so that my day could be extended out, my workout time could be extended out. I think about my friends that were in the marching band, and I think about parades and how much physical activity that these students have. It's very taxing on the body. I mean, they're carrying heavy equipment a lot of the times. They're standing for long periods of times. They're marching, and they're not wearing the most comfortable of shoes, and they're doing this in various types of weather: rain, sleet, snow, shine. They're doing it, and they're doing a phenomenal job. And we've got some of our own schools that have been nationally recognized. Why can't we do kind of like a swap and say, yes, they're marching band, and this is what the classes they're taking, and here's how they're getting their minutes. Because I can't tell you that 5 hours in the parade, you're not going to get your allotment in that time. And it's not like they're dropping off. They're really practicing, and they're practicing while they're, for the engagement that they're going to be going to. I just think that there's some kind of workaround that needs to be looked at here, because they're not giving the due respect to the marching band. And then what makes me think about the JROTC is that, I think about Mr. Tom Jones that comes forward, and then I think we have to do a waiver of his credential. Is it him? But we had some issue with the JROTC instructors, where we had to do something for them at this board level. We had to do some type of waiver or something. I don't want to put them into yet another hurdle and another challenge that they have to overcome. So those are my concerns about this. But I'm all about physical education, and I have a child that graduated high school, and I made her take PE all 4 years and be in a extra sport outside of school. So, I'm very much into this, but I want to find the middle ground as well.
Thank you. So I'll just say with marching band, and as a former band person myself, I understand what you're saying about the amount of physical activity that is involved in marching band. But for the physical education standards, it's a combination. There is the physical activity component of it, but there's also the standards. And so it's the marching band, or JROTC, does have the minute requirement, and it does need to have the activity, but there's the instruction around the physical education standards that also has to be addressed. And there's various strands and components within the physical education standards that any course that's offering PE credit needs to address. It's like English language arts standards. Like there's content that needs to be addressed.
I understand the content part, but I understand that we also have the advanced academics program here with Sac City Unified. Could that component, like the classwork stuff, could that be done then offered online to our students so that they can do it in a time frame that suits them best instead of having to fit that into their everyday schedule?
Yes, so there's opportunities for students to, say, do independent study, but there's also requirements within that independent study. Interesting enough, everything just has, criteria that has to be met. So that is an option for students as well.
Okay, thanks.
Member Cuneo.
Thank you. I have a question about the athletic exemption. If they play football in the fall, does that count for the entire school year of PE?
It does not, because they need to be involved in the sport throughout the school year.
So most kids are, with like football, they're playing spring
Right.
football, they're practicing. Like sports and nowadays at the high school level are, in essence, a year-round kind of project for the most part. We're not going to consider those types of things.
So I'll just share with you what what the Ed Code says, and it's that they need to be involved in that athletic competition throughout the school year in order for them to receive the athletic exemption. They can receive it during the period that they are in the sport, but then if they're not actively involved in that athletic competition, they need to be placed back into a physical education program. And that presents a challenge in why many schools do not do the athletic exemption because of that requirement. It's only those students who are in that interscholastic athletic competition year long that really qualify for that exemption.
And then, I understand. And then you were asking for some guidance on the two special cases as
Yes.
well? I would urge you to use them as exemptions.
Pardon me?
I would urge you to use them as exemptions as well, the two special cases. Is that what you're asking us?
I'm asking for just, what direction would the board like us to take in terms of those two special cases?
Yeah, I would be for it as exemptions to the PE requirement.
Their cases were.
Vice President Hansen.
Thank you. I was also taking a look at the language and the physical activity part. The requirement is 50% of the time. Is that correct?
Physical activity requirement.
50% of the 400 minutes for a high school student
Correct.
has to be physical activity. So marching or JROTC, physical activity would count towards meeting that requirement.
Correct.
So, that makes it more doable in my mind. I'm certainly very much in support of both the marching band and JROTC being able to be included in our district's physical education program. So I'd have to imagine that there's got to be some, I know a lot of folks that are involved in marching band all around the state, other friends of mine that are teachers down in LAUSD, and I just have to imagine there's got to be some statewide organization of folks that are in marching band, because the ones I've met are just fervent about, their involvement in it, like most teachers in their particular area really enjoy it a lot. That there's got to be some good thinking about how you can figure out how to put the course standards of the academic content and merge that into the work that you're doing in some marching band. So I would hope that you might be able to do some outreach, and the parents that are involved that are, understand the value to their students. So I would think that there's got to be some stuff there. So, I don't need to answer back, but because we're still going to hear more about this, but I would, my direction, my one vote would be, let's figure out a way to do it. Let's figure out a way to get to yes instead of saying, no, we can't do that. I think it benefits our students. We need to have a variety of programs in a district this large. We should be able to provide that for our students. I know at McClatchy High School we have an incredible JROTC program. It's a nationally ranked top 30 in the country. And, how are we to say that that's obviously not something that's beneficial? And if policies we pass put that at jeopardy, I'd be aghast. So I know that we can figure out a way to do it. I know there's flexibility in the way that this is written to try to give us that. And I would just urge you to do that and to work with the parents that are involved in it. Maybe we can all figure out some places to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
President Pritchett.
Thank you, President Wu. Can you you probably said this earlier, I'm still trying to wrap my brain around this whole thing, but can you just tell me again how many book hours are needed for physical education?
It's 400 minutes every 10 days. And that's inclusive of, to Board Member Hansen's point, it's a combination of the physical activity and the physical education standards content.
50% needs to be of book time.
Yes, for 50-50, with the activity 50 book time or standards.
So 200 minutes is what's needed. Okay. That was, I needed that clarification. I just, I agree with Member Hansen. I just hope that, going forth, we can find a way, because I'm really worried about the sustainability of our programs in our schools. I think that we could have really great programs. We could have really great ROTC programs, marching band. But with these standards, kids are going to start dropping out because they have to take care of all the rest of the classes, which are far more important, of course. But I just really worry about the sustainability and that we're not going to have these in our schools. So I hope that maybe you guys can look into it a little bit more and come back with us. I'm always willing to take a phone call if you just want to chat it over and help me understand.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Member Rodriguez.
I just have one more question. So we're encountering this hurdle, to stay in the PE language, we're encountering this hurdle right now because of state law language, or is this federal language that we're...
It's state law language.
Well,
yeah,
so
it's a
then,
state requirement.
So then another possible solution could be we lobby and we ask them for some type of change that would make it easier for our students in these two categories. Am I?
I mean, just, greater flexibility, perhaps.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Speaking of greater flexibility, we had a young lady come in before us to make a comment, and about part of the comment was promises that were made to her when she entered school and entered these programs. And what I didn't hear, and I'm sorry I stepped away for a few minutes, but what I didn't hear is whether there is an opportunity to grandfather those students who have made those promises as we move forward. You're asking us to look at these, or in the future adopt board policies, which would take effect immediately. And then for those who are already in the programs where they were promised that they could use this as a substitute, for example, for PE marching band, that there's no exemption for them. So I was wondering whether or not there is a possibility of grandfathering those who are already in the program, so those who have not yet entered into the program or into the courses know what they're getting into.
That's something that we would have to go to CDE about. It's not that it's a new requirement statewide. It's something that is, being revealed as an issue within the district, that we have these programs that are falling, that we've been awarding physical education credit to, that where the state has said that all of the criteria that needs to be in place for them to be awarded are not in place. And so it's something that we can definitely go to CDE to see if there's any flexibility in terms of grandfathering students in.
I mean, I would ask that, and I would ask that as my direction in order to be equitable to those students who we have previously made comments, maybe incorrectly, but I wouldn't say that any of that was intentional. It was probably for all of us, we didn't have full knowledge of what the rules were, and so we were making promises moving forward. So I don't want to penalize those students who, in good faith, decided that they were going to sign up for these programs, and particularly in the case of this young lady taking all these AP classes. I don't want her to miss out on her future as one of our leaders in our community.
Thank you.
Okay.
Board Member Wu, may I respond to your request, please? Superintendent Banda, may I respond? Thank you.
Of course. By all means.
I just want to clearly point out that the district, within the next few weeks, will be engaging in a federal monitoring review. It's important that we are found in compliance. It is a state law, the requirements that Dr. Taylor has outlined, and we can engage with the CDE regarding the request to grant those students that allowance, but at this time it would be
out of
placing
compliance.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
but
with us
we're
being,
we're not
so just a
adopting-
cautionary note.
We're not adopting the policy today anyway, so we're going to be out of compliance.
All right.
All right. So I recognize that.
Thank you.
But thank you for that information. Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Ms. Decker.
Thank you.
Moving on. 9.3, AB 1200, disclosure of costs of the tentative agreement with SCTA and ratification of the tentative agreement with SCTA. Ms. McCarn.
Hello, Board President Wu, Superintendent Banda, and members of the board. With me, Consi McCarn, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources and Employee Compensation. And with me, I have the members of the negotiation team that worked on this. Gerardo Castillo, who you know, Cindy Nguyen is our Employee Relations Director. Monica Garland is in HR as Admin Assistant, and Lisa Allen, who you know is your Chief Schools Officer. So the district has reached a 2-year tentative agreement with the Sacramento City Teachers Association. The agreement addresses a class size reduction and is in compliance with LCFF, as well as providing a number of, or the ability for a number of joint committees and work groups to be developed, including new teacher evaluations, multi-year calendars, benefits committee, reviewing supports provided to special education teachers, and created an extended kinder option. Some specifics of those highlights include reduced class size this year in 14-15 by 1 student, K3, or 15-16 by 2 students, and those are at our sites that are 75% or above free and reduced lunch, and a 2% salary increase effective July 1, 2014, and a 1% increase effective next year, 15-16. I will say that on the class size reduction, while in the contract it speaks specifically to 75% or higher, the district is making every effort to implement that district-wide in our K-3 classrooms. Through this process, we want to thank the SCTA negotiations team and their leadership for the work, time, and energy and effort that they put into this, and we request or recommend approval of this item.
Thank you. Mr. Ross.
We have 2 comments on this item from Grace Trujillo and Angie Sutherland.
Hello, my name is Grace Trujillo. Good evening, members of the board, and Jose Bandera. As I mentioned before, one of the key things is public sector have lost their basic retirement and health care over the years. Enron's a perfect example. Stockton, Chicago, Detroit, all the different areas. This is something that's going to be happening now and in the future if things are not changed. I know when I was looking at the policy for the retirement, I know they say, oh, Grace, it's nothing for you to be concerned about, but it does, because it impacts my schools, it impacts our kids. One of the key things, our kids over the past 8 years have lost over $100 million, which has dirty classrooms, schools that need repair, split classrooms, bigger classroom sizes, no counselors, sports, nurses, transportation, librarians, field trips. This is just the minimum of the things our kids have suffered. Principals, custodians, office managers are doing extra work, multiple tasking, cleaning bathrooms, answering phones, caring because of the works and cuts that have been happening over the years. Special education, I remember at one point there was 26 program specialists, now they're down to 10. We all have been affected in major ways. And if things do not change, it's only going to be a matter of time that our kids are going to be impacted. This is, when I started looking at numbers, I'm always looking for the unknown. And one of the things is, I'm not being against the teachers or any group. I'm looking at it as an investment in the future on how we could find strategies to save and have the same product, but at a cheaper cost. One of the key things I noticed, 50.6 for the teachers for medical, 22 for the principals and everybody else. That's a total of 72. This is part of looking at different options. Like I mentioned before, other schools surrounding us, districts have done that. They're in a much better situation because they have increased their premiums. Maybe they offset it by increasing their wages or having raises over the years. But this is as a parent. Like I said, it takes a lot for me to stand up here, but I care for my future. I care for the kids. I care for the teachers, the principals, and everybody that I see that overworked every single day. But remember, I can't be the only one standing up here and speaking. We all need to speak. And I know there's a lot of people listening to me, and there's a lot of people on television. It's your turn. I can't do it alone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Trujillo.
Hello again. I'm Angie Sutherland, parent at Hollywood Park. I just have a comment about number 18 on the tentative agreement pertaining to the special education students in the student inclusion program. It says, effective beginning September 2014-2015 school year, parties agreed to establish a work group to discuss negotiable effects of the district's student inclusion program. So that's the students that are in either the full, I'm not sure if it's the students that are in the inclusive practices settings or the students that are in the general education settings or the students that are in the special day settings, but supposedly they're going to be making recommendations regarding additional supports for teachers. And so as a parent of a child with special needs, I'm really glad that they are forming a work group because teachers do need more support. So that our students can be successful. Although I'm sad that it says that there's a grievance going on, I'm glad that some recommendations will be coming out of that. And I do wonder if they have any parents involved in the work group, but I think it would be a good idea because many of us have really struggled with our children in the general education setting. For me, it's been like two completely different worlds. One, the special ed setting, which is very supportive, has all the PBIS and SEL. The general ed setting that I experienced with my daughter did not have that. I'm going to give you some personal examples, which I really didn't want to go into, but in the general ed setting, my daughter was removed from the classroom 40 times in 57 days. In special education, 0. There's no behavior problems. Well, if there are, they know how to deal with them. So why can't our general education teachers also have those same skills? Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further public comment? Colleagues? No discussion, no questions? Vice President Hansen.
I'll just applaud, both sides of the, and we should be the same coin here, the SCTA and the district moving forward. There's a lot to celebrate in this tentative agreement. Things that make parents happy, things that make teachers happy. Increase to the salary is great. That's what we should be doing. The decrease in the class sizes, that's great. That's what we should be doing. I've had the opportunity to meet with several dozen teachers over the last 2 months and are definitely supportive of the work that we're doing here at the district. I know that there's a few hurdles that are going to be coming our way in the next few weeks. I hope that everyone can work constructively. People can agree to actually meet, not dodge meetings, to be proactive and working together. Both of us have to do that, the district and the teachers. And that's how we're going to make positive accomplishments and put students first. That's what all of us have as our goal. I know that. So I'd like to just celebrate the positive things here. Let's understand there's still some difficulties and things we have to work with. But I just applaud the good work that was done by both sides on this work so far. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Hansen. Superintendent?
I also want to thank both sides. I want to thank our negotiating team, but also want to thank SCTA. I think a lot of people, the general public, don't realize that these meetings go back weeks, months, and many countless hours. And so I really applaud the work because, I think at the end of the day, we're able to come together and find some common ground and find some things that we feel not only support our employees, our teachers, our certificated, but also support our students in the classroom. So again, very appreciative of all the work. We do have some challenges ahead, but I think that we're off on a good path and looking forward to continuing to work on building our relationship with SCTA and moving on to greater things.
Thank you. I will entertain a motion. Vice President Hansen made a motion. Do I have a second? Vice President Pritchett, second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Oppose? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 9.4, approve resolution number 2813, discontinuance of policy governance model. This is a board action. It was requested, I believe, by Member Rodriguez. Member Arroyo, would you like to lead the charge on this?
I ask for your aye vote.
Okay. Second. Is that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, I have a motion by Member Arroyo and a second by Vice President Hansen. Before I take the vote, are there any public comment? We have one public comment.
We have one public comment on 9.4 from Nikki Molesky.
Good evening, Board President Wu, Superintendent Bond, and members of the Board of Education. I have to say it's nice to see some positive changes beginning to happen. With the discontinuance of coherent governance and moving forward with a new governance policy, you will have the opportunity to make more informed choices and give you access to more information if you choose to read it. We applaud you for that. We also applaud and support your position on the shooting range near George Washington Carver. We join you in putting the safety of our students and our teachers first. Our SCTA board also took a position against the gun shooting range. I want to applaud you for negotiating a good contract. The contract that you just ratified is a good one, and SCTA negotiated in good faith. To reinstate some of the givebacks the teachers have made over the years, to provide modest raise, and to begin to bring some class size reduction to our most needy students. It also develops committees to work on many long-term issues that we all want to see addressed. Please honor this contract so that the district can continue to move forward in a positive manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Molesky. Member Royal.
Well, I asked for an aye. Oh, sorry. No, it's just actually, sorry, I forgot to.
Member Rodriguez?
Thank you, President Wu. I guess along with Member Arroyo, I've been probably the other loudest board member here about this topic. But I cannot let this vote take place without strongly encouraging and recommending that with this vote comes a level of responsibility to establish a policy committee, and that we begin to look and work toward a workable environment for our governance as a whole. And so that would be my recommendation is immediately after taking the vote to establish a policy committee, either a committee of the whole board or a committee of a few to do some heavy lifting and then bringing it back to a committee of the board.
Thank you. So I have a motion and I have a second. Do I have any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. So, we are now transitioning from hearing mode to workshop mode. We'll next hear item 9.5, real property surplus workshop on process with Ms. Allen. So I would call for a 5-minute recess while we switch chairs. Thank you. Careful. That's what they think. Maybe it was written in invisible ink.
You're fine.
This is on.
Go back on the record. You get to operate the clock. Okay. Wow. Turn the microphones down a little bit, please. Item 9.5, Real Property Surplus Workshop, on process. Thank you, Kathy. Or Ms. Allen.
They are kind of close, huh? Well, good evening, President Wu and members of the board and Superintendent Banda. So tonight I bring back for you the opportunity to discuss the real property disposal and what kind of happens when we are going to go through that fun and very lengthy process. So we spent one board meeting briefly discussing this, but it was decided to bring it back for a deeper look at the process itself. What we'd like to do is dialogue about what do districts do when surplus property has been identified. As we know, the process begins with a 7-Eleven committee, typically followed by a recommendation by the committee to the board, and usually that's either surplus or not surplus. If the ultimate decision at the end of the day is to dispose of the property, then a series of ed codes and government codes come into play. And then in addition, it's always important to identify, what are the goals of the district around its asset management, programmatic, financial, and then any other considerations that might be applicable at the time we're discussing property disposal. So tonight's discussion will hopefully identify a focus on the process by which the board is notified of any interest in property. And then just wanted to point out again that it does involve some confidentiality at times, and so we need to be able to determine how do we provide the opportunity for staff and the board itself or a committee of the board to negotiate while maintaining some confidentiality, specifically around price. Usually we don't want to drive up the price unnecessarily. And we also want to evaluate what the district's needs are, if any, on a particular site, both current and down the road. If there's any community interest, do we have any private interest, and are there any possible joint ventures that might be available for consideration down the road? So you've seen this before. This is a chart we prepared for you last time that identifies the steps that the districts must take to dispose of property. So the left side includes what we refer to as the major exceptions to the process. There's 3 really major exceptions. One is a historic building designation that we could go through in particular instances. The other one is a land exchange process, which we've had a little bit of talk on before. And then the third, and rarely used, is the State Board of Ed waiver. If you do have any questions about that side of the house or that chart, we could ask Mr. Green to comment on those. But really what I wanted to do tonight was talk a little bit more about the process on the right-hand side. And then overall what we're trying to do is identify the process when a property is declared surplus and then what happens, regardless of whether we want to sell it or exchange it or do something on a waiver. We just want to define what the process is. So I've added some new slides in for you. I borrowed some of these from the Fresno County Office of Education. I went to a very good workshop about a month ago, and it was a very detailed discussion about how to sell property. So this slide and the several others that follow are really provided for your information. I'm not going to go into huge detail about this, but I thought it would be good for you to have it for future reference, because we'll have to come back and look at this from time to time. Typically, we start with our planning and considerations. In some cases, in some of the properties that we've been talking about, we've completed this step. In cases, again, we've also completed this step. We have not in the past consulted with a broker during the 7-Eleven process, but if we knew going into that process right away that there were going to be properties that we would likely sell, then we probably would have brought a broker in at the time to help us go through that process and figure out, appraisals and what that looks like. So again, it's an option during the 7-Eleven process itself. So these next slides, again, just provide you with the steps that we will have to go through when and if we do get to the point of disposing of any property. Again, they're here for your reference. I'm not going to go through them because they're going to take quite a while. I think what I really want to just say is that this is not a fast thing. This is a lot of noticing requirements, 30, 60, 90-day noticing requirements, enough time for people to respond. Sometimes we can do things simultaneously. We try and shorten up the process as much as possible, but there's a significant group of entities that need to be notified of the process and given ample opportunity to respond. And then if we don't get any response from them, we go to the next step. And I'm going to jump all the way to I'm getting my 10 minutes in right here. The discussion points. So, and before we come back to this, let me just go to the last slide real quick. What we're looking for tonight, again, just a discussion with the board and some direction. And then I put up here a request for qualification as an option that we may want to consider. We could conduct an RFQ, or request for qualifications, for a firm that specializes in what we're kind of calling asset management. We do have some assets throughout the district that will most likely not be used for school purposes. We would ask them to evaluate the properties that the board indicates are available and then make recommendations for their ultimate highest and best use. What it could mean a sale. It could mean hold on to a piece of property for a while the value goes up. It could mean exchange it for something. It could mean go into a joint use agreement with another entity. I mean, it could. They would do this independent evaluation of the assets that we've identified for them to take a look at. So I like it in terms of it's a third-party evaluation of our sites. So it's somebody that could look at the market, look at what's happening in the area, and come up with the highest and best use. I've been approached by many, many firms since we kind of started down this path, and so there's obviously a lot of folks out there that are more than happy to help us through this. I would not make, if we were to go through this, then we would just pay them a negotiated fee for the scope of services, and their fee would not be based on the selling of any property, or so it would be a kind of a one-time shot at taking a look at what we have on the table to date. So with that, I want to go back and get back to our discussion points, which is, I believe, where we kind of ended up the last time we were here. Turn it back over to you.
We went through that.
I can go. Can I go?
Okay.
At what? Can I ask? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't mean to usurp you.
Raise your hand.
Member Cuneo.
Thank you. I just have a question in regard to confidentiality. Just around what issues do you think confidentiality needs to be taken into account, and what are the reasons for that? Just kind of as you see it.
Essentially, Jerry Barris, General Counsel. When you focus on a property regarding price and terms, you can discuss that in a closed session environment. In fact, what you have not done in the past, you can actually approve an agreement if it's an exception in closed session and report it out. You don't do that because of transparency, but the Brown Act allows you to do that. So the confidentiality issue is generally priced in terms of an agreement. And you specify who the negotiators are and identify the property. And that allows you in closed session to discuss it.
And Ms. Allen, I know you've told us this in the past, but can you remind me again, kind of what are the policy considerations around keeping those things confidential? Like, what are the arguments for keeping that confidential?
Well, in terms of the exchange that we were contemplating, we don't want to artificially drive up the price of the property that the district might be interested in. So, as soon as anybody finds out a public entity is interested in a piece of property, obviously the price is most likely going to go up. If we were to purchase a piece of property, the same thing. We wouldn't want to make it known that we were interested in buying that property too early, before we were able to enter into some kind of a preliminary agreement with a seller regarding a sale of property. When we go through those processes that are outlined in Ed Code, then we get into bidding. You could end up with a fair market value at the end or the highest bid at the end, just depending on where, as we go through those steps, does somebody come in and meet that requirement that's acceptable to the board, that meets what we've identified in the scope. So again, anytime, you don't want to get into a bidding war, whether we're selling or whether we're buying.
Okay, I have a question. So, looking at the one property that generated a lot of interest several months ago, I assume the interest will still be there if we ever get around to making some decisions, which I hope we do at some point. The 16th and N property, if we wanted to, people just, or the folks that were interested just gave us proposals of things that they were interested in doing. If we wanted to formally accept proposals, do we first have to vote to make the property surplus to actually get formal proposals, or can we get formal proposals without making that step?
I think because the 7-Eleven committee that met to declare 16th and N in particular surplus and made the recommendation to the board, I don't know for sure that the board took an official vote on declaring it surplus. So to be safe, it would be much better to bring it back and just we wouldn't have to reconvene a 7-Eleven committee. We could just bring it to the board and say, staff's recommendation would be to declare it surplus, for example. And then that kicks off, if you go back to that chart again, that kicks off what happens by Ed Code. So if we wanted to go the route of a sale, then we start with, the top box, and we go through that whole process with CEQA and surveys and legal descriptions and on and on and on. Again, follows a very strict process. If we wanted to go the other route, for example, the exchange, which was on the table at one point in time, it's a shorter route, still guided by Ed Code, but it is a shorter route. But I guess the quick answer to your question, once we declare it surplus, you can't just immediately say, let's accept proposals. We have to publish and announce and review. It would start a process in place. And I think there's actually a time limit.
We don't have to say which route we want to take. We don't have to say it's surplus and it's going to be for sale, or it's surplus and it's going for government. So we could just say it's surplus, and then we could allow proposals to come to us. We did the whatever notice requirements, so everybody gets a shot to make a proposal. So we don't have to declare ahead of time what our intention is, because if the best option for us is to sell it, and that's what we want to do for the district. If the best option is to let some other entity have a co-lease with us or whatever the different kinds of things that could come in, who knows. But we could declare it surplus and then look and see what happens. Would there be a downside if we declared it surplus and we didn't like any of the proposals in front of us?
No. Ultimately, you make that decision. Usually what happens, if there is no major exception pursued, you go through the entire process. Because there are so many notices to various agencies and entities, including 501c3 corporations. Typically, what a district does is receive a 7-Eleven report. The recommendation for a property is surplus. You have to, as a board, accept the fact that you would like to surplus property. Then you go out to all the noticing, all the good faith negotiations, and if you're unable to have an agreement with any of these this list, which is quite long, then you can come back by a 2/3 vote, adopt a resolution specifying what you are inviting as bids through the entire market. And at that point, you can take, obviously, the highest bid for that property. And in that same meeting, you can also invite oral bids, which would have to be 5% above what was the best bid for the property. You can still refuse to accept that bid. And you can decide to pull it back at any time, and you can decide to send it out to the market at any time. You have flexibility through this entire process. So it's up to you as a board as to how you want to proceed.
One final question, and so this property had gone through the 7-Eleven process. Obviously, it wasn't this last 7-Eleven committee, it was a previous one some number of years ago, so there's already an existing report on this
Yes.
property. Okay, thank you. So we don't have to go through that whole process.
I would recommend bringing a recommendation to the board to surplus those if that's the direction we're
All
going to
right,
go.
very good, thank you.
So for the benefit of the board, no matter which one of these processes we do, what kind of a timeline are we talking about? We're talking many months, maybe a year?
Yes.
For the process?
Unless, if we were to go through a 7-Eleven committee and identify at the get-go, so let's say, and I hate to bring up the 7 sites, but let's say when we went through that process, we knew right away that 2 were going to be sold and 2 were going to be not surplus and 3 were going to be open for something else. We could have made that determination at that time and then started each one of those processes at the same time. Since, we didn't do that with the first 3 properties, I think the best way to do this, as Member Hansen said, is to receive all those proposals. So a sale proposal or an exchange proposal or a waiver proposal, I think they all deserve equal weight and merit. But I think we need to lean on somebody who does this for a living to help us write what that scope looks like. So what is the highest and best use of 16th and N in terms of, when I say highest and best use, it would be for the district. What can the district get the most out of 16th and N, for example? It might be, like I said, you should hang on to that property for 10 more years because it's just going to triple in value. It could be you better get rid of it now because the getting rid of is good. We might get approached by CSU Sacramento or one of the UCs or the city of Sacramento for some type of a joint use thing. So all those things could be put on the table and evaluated by the board. But they follow a process that's very lengthy.
For Royal?
If this discussion is
No? I have this question. So I think, Ms. Allen, you're hinting back at asset management. And I'm intrigued at the notion of asset management. And just from your experience, judging by these 3 properties that are before us, how much do you think an asset manager would cost the district? Number one, and it seems like you put a premium value on their recommendation. And so, in your professional opinion, would you prefer that this board give you the direction to hire an asset manager to come back with a report to give us the breadth of the realm of possibilities that we can do for these 3 pieces of property?
Yes. I'd love for that to happen. Again, I think it's an independent third party, so it's not somebody that's got a vested financial interest in the outcome of any of those properties. Again, they do this for a living, so they would be able to evaluate location, location, location. We've had some appraisals done already on a couple of other of our properties, but we're looking at it in terms of one particular use. So I think they would be able to recommend. They're just going to have a better grasp on it than I do, in my professional opinion. I think in terms of cost, in this case, we would probably be very specific about those 3 properties. We don't want to come back and keep doing this again and again. So I would recommend that we would prepare the scope of the RFQ to evaluate those 3 properties and then bring that back to the board and go from there. How much that would cost? It's not going to cost much. 20 grand maybe.
So it sounds like, well, if 20 grand is a ballpark, it sounds like they may be worth their weight in gold if we can benefit and recoup that cost when we dispose of the properties.
I think we need to look long term as well. So we aren't just talking about these 3 over the life of maybe the next 10 or 20 years. There's more likely going to be something else that would come up that would fall into this category as well. So it'd be kind of nice to have somebody look at all properties, but I think to get things going, because there's some interest in at least one of the properties, we could focus on those 3 at first, see how the process goes. If it works well for us when we come to the point where we do declare surplus and we go through that process, then we could certainly do it again.
Member Rodriguez.
Go first.
I just wanted to support that recommendation of getting an asset manager, somebody who really knows properties. In one of my previous districts, that they were worth their weight in gold just because they have their ear to the ground, they know what's going on, they really know properties and assets and can give us, I think, a real accurate figure of what we're able to do with these properties moving forward.
Thank you. I just want to be picky about the words that we're using here, because first of all, I think we have to acknowledge that there have been a lot of missteps when we're talking about property, especially in the last year or so. So I don't feel comfortable with the board again abdicating some kind of role and responsibility off to staff to go out and select an asset manager. I think the board needs to be intimately involved in that, first of all. I just call it lack of confidence at this point, but we really need to have a tighter control over this. We all know about what's been in the history, and some parts we can't talk about, but I think we all are aware of that. Second of all, before we start throwing numbers out there, I think you need to be a lot more accurate, not to say somewhere in the ballpark of 20,000. It could be more, it could be less. We need to be very, very careful. This is a public meeting. We need to be very factual about what we're saying and what we're throwing out there. So I just want to remind everybody, pick your words, choose them correctly, and then also be factual about what you're saying, okay? Because that's one of the things that is my big pet peeve. And I'm very much listening intently, and I'm taking notes, and I will come back, and I will call people on whatever it is that they said. Just putting it out there.
Thank you, President Wu. So I do have a few questions. First of all, to a comment that Ms. Allen just mentioned, that we don't want to be in a bidding war, either buying or selling. I thought that we want to be in a bidding war if you're selling.
Yes.
I was like, why do we want it? But that's if we're selling. But before we even get there, this is a very thorough process. And so I've mentioned this multiple times in that while we're getting a clear explanation of what's in statute, in the state law, what are our options, what we need to follow. I am still of the mind that we need an internal district policy on how we, the board, need to see these projects coming through. Because while we are having this workshop right now, we're having right now is because the lack of transparency that we didn't see prior on how projects were being disposed of. And so regardless of what happens with 16 and N property or any other property, let's say that we dispose of one, nothing happens over the years, board turns over, and then we find ourselves, or whoever the board is at the time finds itself with making a decision, and then this thing happens again. And I think that there needs to be greater clarity as to when staff needs to alert the board and bring this into open discussion. A whole dialogue went for an entire year without the board knowing what was happening to the property on Nth and 16th. And it was not until the very last minute that questions came up. And then we didn't know what was going on. And finally, 6 months later, now we are finally getting a presentation of what our options are. And we need to be very transparent and take bids and take the best one. Well, none of that was happening less than a year ago. I don't want that to happen again. And so I would really want, with the assistance of staff or whichever way as the board decide, but we need to have a greater direction to staff as to when we need to see these items come back, either at every stage. For further discussion, we don't have to determine right now, but I need to remind the board that it would be great if we can have a policy that normalizes how these items come before the board for approval. Then, as we are talking about the three properties, and I think it's at 16th and Nth, Jefferson, Marshall, and okay. I think that it's premature to say that we just want to surplus them and sell them, right? I mean, if you talk to some of the folks in the downtown area, they will tell you that downtown is growing and they will have a demographical uptrend in population. And so selling property seems foolish at this point. Maybe we can dispose of one or the other, but I don't know what role Marshall, for example, should play in meeting the educational needs of the children, the families, the population within downtown Sacramento. So having said that, for us to start moving with an appraiser and someone that can tell us how much the property is worth, well, the property is worth more to us if we know that we're going to be using it in the future, right? And so I'm not sure that whatever the 7-Eleven committee did years ago still applies till today. And so I think that I want to see properties being dealt with on a one-by-one case basis. If we are ready to move on the property on Nth and 16th, so be it, right? I mean, we've been discussing that one now, but I don't want to bundle three properties just because we're going to get into this process of what to do with these surplus properties without necessarily having a revisit about what are our needs in the district first and foremost, given that we are entrusted to educate kids. I don't know if demographical information about our areas within the city have been procured yet. And we've talked about this multiple times and still has not made it to the board because we want to see where the trends are at, right? I mean, we just approved co-opting a piece of property, McKinley Village, right? I mean, that's going to put pressure on students. There's a new property that it's been developed by the rail yards downtown Sacramento. That's going to put pressure. We shut down Washington Elementary. Where are these kids going to go to school? I mean, there are huge fundamental questions about what we're doing as a district and what we're going to be doing in the near future to serve educational needs. And so to move to say how we're going to dispose of these properties, not quite the right timing, I think. And so I think that we need to do a little bit more internal studying about what is it that we need. And with that, I will just wrap up my comments. Thank you.
I think, some of the things I've heard make sense to me. I think writing up a policy, for long-term, for a process of what should be the process for excess properties, so we have something that's in place that guides us, beyond the time that we're here into the future. If it's something good, then if it's not, then other future boards can make changes, but that way we don't get into any of the, difficulties we've had the last year or so. So I think that's something that's wise and can be done while we're also dealing with the things that are in front of us right now. I do think Washington Elementary is going to be a school that is going to be available and should be used for the future growth that we're seeing downtown, absolutely. I'm meeting with a lot of folks on that all the time because I get called a lot about that one. But I will tell you that there's absolute impact today on the abandoned properties, and they are abandoned properties at 16th and N and Marshall. Go drive by Marshall. There is a fence around that. And I've been, spending a lot of time in the neighborhoods, more than normal, knocking on people's doors, and guess what? I get asked about that. That's one of the top 3 questions. What are we doing with abandoned properties? If I lived in that neighborhood and I had a boarded up or fenced up, blighted property, it's beautiful on the other side of the fence, but it's got a chain link fence around it and has been there for years. I'm tired of waiting for the board to do something, and we haven't been doing anything. And as I've mentioned before, 16th and N, for years, for a decade that I lived really close to that property, I used to curse the city all the time driving by that, going, look at that blighted piece of property. And I got on the board, I found out it was ours. Like, oh my God. I was cursing the wrong group. And I know that there was a plan for that for a number of years, but it's been years. And that's a blight on the neighborhood. There are people that live there. I go by that every other day, and it's a blight. It's ugly. I mean, we're not going to be able to use it. It's not field act compliant. It would cost us millions of dollars. Or if we want to tear it down and build a new school, millions of dollars. We know that that's not possible or feasible. And we know Washington Elementary is going to be the school for these things. I think, I think we need to have long-term processes. I think we need to have a 2-track system here. It's been a long time, and we can keep, collecting more information and not making a decision, but we're doing a disservice to my neighborhood. And I think we need to give a little direction. Even after we give a little direction, it's still going to be another year. So if we can have another workshop in 2 months from now, and it'll be the same thing. I'm very frustrated, I have to admit, because we had this in front of us 3 months ago. And here we are. I've learned maybe 2 more things that I didn't know that I could have read. So I really haven't learned a whole lot more, except my frustration level has grown. I don't want to put off moving in some direction. And we're not committing ourselves to selling. That's why I asked that question. We're not committing ourselves to not leasing it out. I do think, though, the properties are going to grow in value. I think there's an opportunity. Maybe the district, maybe there's some exciting thing. There are exciting things I've heard about in other districts where districts are leasing property to property managers and they co-own it and they generate income from it in perpetuity. Look, our school district, hopefully is not going anywhere for perpetuity. And to be able to turn an asset into something that's of value to the district in perpetuity, I think there's some fantastic, innovative things that are happening. Selling it really is not something I'd be considered. And I'm sure there's some developers that would be sad to hear that because they would like to just buy it and make as much money as they can. But I think we should look at some opportunities that are in front of us. So I hope that at the end of this discussion tonight, we can get some direction and maybe we ask staff to come back with a policy, for the long term, of going forward, what the process is for excess properties. I think that's absolutely needed and would be very appropriate. But I'd also, hiring an asset manager, if we give a ballpark figure, we say it's under some certain amount and we ask for a group of us to be on the interview committee so we get to meet these folks, I would be in support of that because I'd like to be involved. And I know that Member Rodriguez and I'm sure others would be interested in seeing how that works out because we have other properties that are going to be in this situation. And I think that'll be very positive for all of us. It can be done very transparently, but I'm eager to get going. Let's do something. I'd hate to have to wait 2 more months and listen to people and my own self, driving by these boarded up, blighted, fenced up properties and wondering what the heck are we going to do and when are we going to do something. So I'd like to, I don't know, it's not appropriate maybe to make a motion after I've gone on a tirade, but I would like to. I think maybe here if someone else has got a motion, or I'd be happy to make one if it's appropriate.
I think a motion is premature. This is a conference item, And so what we want to do is give ideas to staff, and hopefully it will coalesce into some direction. I like your idea. Member Arroyo, you had a comment?
Yeah, and I'm not going to oppose any of what Vice President Hansen said. I don't want to make perfect the enemy of moving forward. I just want good planning. That's all I'm asking, just good planning, because I don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot. That is all. I mean, I'm not saying kick this into the future for years, stall it. That's not my intent. My intent is it shouldn't take too long to get a decent picture of what we have in the future. We just need to look a little bit more into the horizon to figure out what our needs are and then make the right call. So, because we will have to give some direction to whoever the asset planner is, right? They'll come in, and we need to give them a direction. Do we want to sell? Do we want to develop? We should have an idea what our educational needs are going to be in downtown area, at the minimum, so that we know more or less what options they can look at or how, what to do with those properties. That's what I was trying to say.
Member Rodriguez.
So I can't disagree with either one of you, Vice President Hansen and Member Arroyo. I have been for months asking for information, specifically demographics, trending, what are our birth rates? I mean, just simple things like that. And it's unfortunate that we haven't had any of that information before us. I asked for them. I'm not trying to hold anything up, but when you can't get the basic information out from somebody, it's really difficult. And again, it goes back to the level of trust and confidence that one would have in this. And I do agree that we have to know something in order to go out for an RFQ or an RFP or, whatever, IFQ, whatever. I mean, I used to do them all. Doing one right now. So I do know the process of that, and I do know you need to have some kind of skeleton to go out there to say this is what the basic idea of what we're looking at. And if we can't get to that point, then that's where we're experiencing this stall. So we need a professional advisor, absolutely. But how do we get to that point is even more difficult than anything else, because you make a request and then it falls on deaf ears, and then you come back and you're making the same 10 requests and then 3 more on top of that, and then I don't know if people get overwhelmed or just don't know where to start. I mean, census data is available. Hospital records are available. I mean, partnerships, that's what this district is all about, and that's what we need to be looking at. There's a lot of information on the CDE website that I pulled up myself. At some point I questioned myself. I'm not getting paid the big bucks to do this. I get paid a stipend, and I have to do more homework on my side in order to be more informed to make a decision. And there's something wrong in that picture. So that's where I'm coming from. I'd love to move forward to have a more productive discussion, but you've got to get me to that point. You've got to build the trust, and you've got to get me there, because otherwise we're just going to have this back and forth dialogue, and it's going to go nowhere. So I think my recommendation would be go back to the prior board meetings that we've discussed this issue. Listen to what board members were saying. At least have some of that information before us. I really appreciate this information here, because it is a little bit more comprehensive than what we have received in the past. But there's a lot of questions that have gone unanswered, and that's what I was hoping for tonight. In addition to that, I feel misled because I wasn't told that we're working on the surplus workshop. I read in the packet that we're looking at scoring criteria and that we're looking at accepting proposals on October 16th. And yeah, well, is it the next item? Oh, I didn't read and that's my fault. So, I mean, this is how we get ourselves in this whole pickle, because I'm looking at this one item, and when I don't have trust, I'm like, what the heck is going on? So, I mean, I hate to be like this. I hate to take it out in the open like this, but I feel like I have no other choice but to put it out here now. When I feel disrespected because I ask questions and nothing gets produced. And that's where I'm at right now. I can't even give you a clear direction. I need to see data. And I'm all about data. I just need to see it.
Rodriguez. Ms. Allen? Oh, sorry, Jeff. Member Cuneo. Yeah.
I would agree on a way forward. First, I would agree on trying to find an asset manager of some expertise to guide us in looking at the 3 properties that are kind of on the table at this point. I also agree very strongly with Member Arroyo's comments in regard to a policy or lack thereof, and I think that's what got us into some of these positions and spots we were in over the last year. And I would ask staff to try to craft some sort of policy that takes into account a couple of things, where the breaking point between bringing the proposals to the board should be. Like it said, I don't know a great answer for that, but I think maybe a few options around that. And then also in regard to the confidentiality of information, I, for one, the reason why I asked the first question about when information should be confidential, the responses to me didn't really counsel for more confidentiality. They actually counseled for less. So I would urge transparency in this process. But I think it needs to be done. I think we can deal with these properties in a open, transparent, and expeditious manner, but at the same time, we can't just allow the status quo to continue.
I would like to also recommend that we just give the board some direction to bring back a proposal for us. I think working on some process for, whatever the right timeline is, but what happens with excess properties, how we should look at, maybe we have a proposal, we have something that goes into our rules, bylaws, and policy of what the process is. And then bring us a proposal for hiring an asset manager and have included in the writing the request for proposal or qualifications, RFQ, a couple board members that are interested in helping write the RFQ. So we would work with staff to do that, and then put something out and come up with some timelines on when we're going to do this, so we don't continue to just keep going on and on and on. If that can be brought back to us in the next, 2 to 4 weeks, and then put a timeline on us of actually accomplishing the RFQ, 4 weeks, 6 weeks after that. So there's some certainties there. I will be much more comfortable, and I'll be able to explain to my community, why they're just going to have to tolerate a boarded up, vacant, blighted part of their community for, another however many months this takes us to get this together. And then I think it would be valuable for all of us here who have questions, specific questions, to write those down and send them to all of us so we can all see. Then it'll help, maybe give me some ideas of some questions that I haven't thought of. That can be part of the process moving forward. But the key part is moving forward. Moving forward. We've been treading water on this for way too long. Frankly, it's an embarrassment for me. We are all competent people here, and we're absolutely qualified to come up with something to get us, get this thing moving. It doesn't have to be perfect to start with. I think we can, do kind of a design build here, and we know the direction we want to go in. Let's start moving it forward. So that would be my recommendation.
I have one question, and then I have a comment. So the question is, would an asset manager, in your mind, include, so an asset manager would have some professional experience. I'm going to try to draw an analogy. When we hired superintendent, we went out with an RFQ or an RFP to ask for qualifications of search firms. And then we asked them to put together a plan, the one we hired put together a plan which included soliciting public comment. because we wanted to engage all our stakeholders in what criteria they were interested in seeing in a new superintendent. Do typical asset management include that in their studies or in the recommendations?
Of what the community might want to see? Frankly, I don't know the answer to that. My gut says that the issue with that would be if the district were to sell a piece of property to a firm or whatever, that property then becomes theirs. What they intend to do with that property now becomes, in this case, the city of Sacramento's purview. So I'm not sure how that would work from a legal standpoint, other than, Member Hanson, you mentioned that districts are doing some very interesting things with developers and properties that have been declared surplus in terms of, it is pretty exciting actually to see what folks have done, and I'll throw this out there. For example, we typically locate schools in residential areas, so they're already zoned residential, and then we exempt ourselves from that zoning, and it allows us to build a school. If a school is now closed and laying fallow, so to speak, one of the things that we're seeing happening is these partnerships with developers to go in, take that school, and turn it into a 960 square foot low-income housing or senior housing. So it's kind of a neat thing. There's common area, there's parking, the utilities are there, there's grass there, there's a multi there, so there's some kind of cool things that are happening, not just in California, but a lot of it in Chicago and some other large cities. So I love the thought of that. I think that's down the road a ways. So in terms of asking for community input on a particular piece of property, I just don't know how that would work. I can certainly ask the question, but I don't know how that would work.
Superintendent?
So hopefully I can wrap this up because I know we still have one more presentation, but I just want to make sure that, I want to address a couple of the issues that came up and then move forward. It seems like we're dealing with a little bit of previous history and whatever happened, I'm not fully in the loop about what happened before, but we definitely want to make this an open type of process, transparent, if you will, to make sure that not only the board knows and understands what's going on as we move forward with potential, disposal of these properties, whether it's a sale or trade or whatever happens, but that the public knows that. And so definitely we're hearing that loud and clear. The delay, I think, was for a reason. There was transition going on. You were between, finding a new soup, hiring a new soup, and then trying to get the start of the school year. So we didn't like that delay, but I think the delay was there. It just happened because of transition reasons. But we do want to keep this process going on. I am hearing loud and clear that board wants to have some direction and input on this. So we can start to develop an RFQ and then have the board, and whether it's 2 board members or 3 board members or whomever wants to be a part. I know I hear that Vice President Hanson and Board Member Rodriguez want to be a part of that. And then I heard something about drafting a board policy. So I can work with Jerry to see what that looks like so that it's pretty clear about what the responsibilities are. And then I don't know if that includes, Jerry, you may have more experience with this. That includes timelines or how do we go through this process in a more timely way. So I think that would keep this process going. We will keep it above board. I am working very closely with Kathy. In fact, we prepped for these 2 presentations, and we'll continue to work closely together along with staff to make sure that we're on the top of our game when we come and meet with the board.
I understand we may have a public comment.
Yes, we have one public comment from Terrence Gladney.
Good evening, Terrence Gladney. I just want to contribute a little bit to the discussion. Ms. Allen had a question about what community input looks like. Thanks to Board Member Rodriguez and Hmong Innovating Politic and Dr. Richard Pan's office, when there was questions about, what the community wanted from Mark Hopkins, there were surveys that went around, and that's one way to engage. Phone calls are one way, but we walk the neighborhoods, and that's how you get community input is, you leave Cerna, go out to the community and engage the people who frequent the area and see what they want. It's no different than parent engagement. You can do a survey, but when you include people in the process and ask what they want, you reshape the conversation from deciding what you think people want to, what they say that they want. And we in PTA, we have the same thing. Sometimes just a few people make the decisions. But when you're inclusive, whether it's just in thought or in action, about how what you're going to do impacts all those people, then it starts to lead a different sort of action, on your part, and you become a little bit more accountable for yourself and making sure that even if those people don't come to the table, you're cognizant about how you're impacting them. So I hope that, whatever it is, I don't live in that community, but it's part of my greater community. So I hope that it's inclusive of all stakeholders and everybody that's going to be affected and impacted.
Thank you, Mr. Gunn.
Can I make a follow-up to that comment? Is that the important thing to what he just said is that we didn't just focus on Sac City students and parents. It was an entire community. And the only way you can reach out to them is really do what he just described. You have to reach out to the community. There is no easy way around it. So, and if we did it free, I would expect that we can certainly get that task done for all of these school sites.
Thank you, Member Rodriguez.
I just have one request. I know that I asked for this in the past, but is there any way that you could send out to the entire board all of the properties that are empty in our district?
So this was sent to you in August. It's the list of
Do we
all
have
the
that
closed
here?
sites.
Did you get that? I didn't get that
No,
either.
it was in a BC, so we can do it again.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you. That's all I had.
Without any further ado, then, let's move on to item 9.6, determine criteria used for scoring community proposals for repurpose and reuse of closed school sites. I notice that the time is now 10:17. Ms. Allen, what is your best guess as to how long this item will take?
My part's relatively small. It's going to be up to you guys.
I have a motion to, that's when we stop. We hit 10:30, I'm walking in, so I want to do it
At
first.
10:30, we can motion to extend.
Come on,
the
do it
meeting.
now.
Okay, I'll motion
Commit.
to extend it to 10:40.
All right. $10:30?
Let's go through it.
Well,
Because
I
you
mean,
can't ask a lot of questions.
I don't mind continuing the discussion if we go, if you have to leave.
I don't think you get it. I want to be part of the discussion. And
Exactly,
if
that's
we,
why I don't mind continuing it.
yeah, to another day, to the
Yes.
next board meeting.
Yes.
Yes, that way I can
Yes,
better plan for
Okay.
a longer meeting.
all right. Yeah, I would too. So why don't we take staff's presentation and any public comment that we might have, and then we'll keep going.
Okay. So just a little bit of background on what we've done so far. In June, we presented the information to the board outlining our proposed criteria in the fee structure. We were asked to come back with some additional information on costs and describe what the civic permit process looked like. We did that. We offered tours for any interested party and individual. Those tours took place in mid-July, early mid-July. July 17th, we came back with more information for the board, and then we held a public forum at Fruit Ridge on August 27th for interested parties again. We discussed at that meeting all the documentation that had been developed and brought to us and asked of us, and what we're coming with tonight then is the proposal for closed sites and how the board would like to score these. So if you'll go to the last 3 pages of your packet, you'll see this proposal document. What I've done on the slides from here on out is taken each one of those categories, kind of highlighted some of the important areas on that, You were sent this in a BC last Friday, I believe, or 2 Fridays ago. Hopefully you've had the opportunity to take a look at it and formulate some ideas of what you think the scoring should look like. We've allocated 100 points total. There are 8 categories. So for example, the description of the organization is the very first category you see on the proposal. We're asking them to identify who the lead tenant or the lead renter, whatever terminology we want to use from that. And also, what is their organization all about? What is their objectives, and what area do they serve? And then we're asking them to identify their nonprofit status. So we have the option at this point of assigning a point value to that to help kind of rank all of these proposals when they come in. The next, I'm just going to skip through this real quick and give you an idea of what we're looking for from staff's perspective. So the next section on this is the ownership and who the legal entity is. Do they require any special licenses or permits to operate their business? Because that may affect, again, the zoning issue of a particular school site. We're interested to know whether this is an expansion of a current organization or if they are relocating an existing organization. And again, we have the option of identifying a point value for this criteria. We are interested in who their partners are. Is this a new partnership? Or will your partners operate independently but just share some same space? What is the financial arrangement with those partners? We've asked folks to identify the location, both the first choice and the second choice, in case we are, and we do end up in a situation where we can't, for whatever reason, honor somebody's first choice. We've given them maps to all these sites. We've asked them to identify the specific areas on each campus that they would be interested in, including all the ancillary facilities. The interior, we're asking questions on the interior specifically because it could affect DSA. If they want to tear down walls and windows and doors or build something, then that's going to be a little bit more extensive, and that's something that the board would have to decide whether, we want to do that or not. It costs money, costs a lot more money than most people think because of DSA and prevailing wage, et cetera. And then if at any time we do have to return a site back to its original purpose, then we would be responsible in some degree of turning those, returning it back to its original use. So it could just be, we want to know that. We want to know if they're planning on doing something that could potentially impact us down the road. We had some questions about the hours of operation. Will they follow our calendar? How long do they think it'll take to get going? And then we wanted to know whether they wanted exclusive use of common spaces, which would prohibit us from being able to let other folks use, for example, a soccer field. We have a lot of folks that like to use our soccer fields, and they book those through the civic permit process. And if one of the firms that's interested in sites wants exclusive use, then I think we need to take that into consideration as well. So this one gets into a little bit more specifics about, what is the service they're going to provide? Why is there a demand? How do they benefit our kids, our students, our families, the community? And do they charge? If so, how much? And then following some feedback from the board in an earlier board meeting, we're asking them to describe whether their service will provide anything in the area of job creation and housing and healthcare and anything to do with senior focus groups. Recognizing that most of these folks will be a newly created entity of some kind and not something that's been around for 10 years, they probably won't have 10 years worth of financial data for us to take a look at. So in lieu of that, again, we're trying to make this as easy as possible. We've asked them to identify what their first year of operation of the facility will look like from a financial standpoint. And it could be things like, well, we're going to get rent from this company and this company and this company's, we're getting a grant from them. This company over here is going to donate in-kind services. So we're just asking for some kind of a description of what that looks like for the first year. We've given them an opportunity in the document to upload any other miscellaneous documents, so their nonprofit status. If they've got letters of support from other entities, they can put those on the proposal as well. This is the website. I know there's been some questions asked sometime about how the board can access the documents. There's the website for you. So the next steps, again, what we were trying to do is to take that 3-page document. There's boxes on it. We need 100 points. We need to allocate points to those boxes. Once we do that, we can we'll finalize it. We'll share it with all the interested individuals and the organizations. And right now, we have proposals due on October 16th, and we would bring a summary of all the proposals received to the board on November 6th. So if we wanted to make it really easy, what we kind of figured was that we would want to put a little bit more emphasis on the services and benefits provided area, and then also the financial management, because we really do want to make sure that these folks can write us a check every month for rent. So you could assign 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and 10 on the first page, and then 10 for the second, and then 20 points for each of the last two, and you've got your 100 points. Very quick, very down and dirty.
Very comprehensive. Thank you. Comments, questions?
Yes,
do we have
I
any? We have no public comments, so we'll keep going until 10:29, and then adjourn.
Ms. Allen, I was just wondering on the date for the proposals due, October 16th, since we're not talking a board discussion about this tonight, we won't be coming back until after that date. Is that right? When's our next board meeting?
10:16.
Oh, on that date? Do we need to push back that date?
Push it back again, yeah.
How do you guys feel about that?
Maria?
So there were proposals, I were told, that were submitted September 10th. We were told by some folks that had to submit applications for September 10th deadline.
Well, that was, if you'll see on there, it says proposals were due originally on 9/10, and then when the scoring rubric started coming up, we pushed that out until the 16th. So everybody was notified. That's on our list.
But the question that I have is, we haven't really looked at it. Isn't it this board driven? And so they are applying for the second time with a rubric or application that we haven't even looked at?
Well, the proposal's been the same since August. What the new part to this would be, how are we going to score this? So
But sorry, go ahead. I apologize.
That was requested by the board with some input into what this criteria matrix would look like. Again, we're trying to keep it fairly simple, so we put the scoring components within the proposal itself. So we immediately pushed out the proposals from September 10th into what we thought might be a reasonable time frame.
But I thought that one of the key questions that we needed to address is rate fees and what we were going to charge who, different uses, partnerships. There are so many questions, and you're asking an applicant to put a proposal with financials that we haven't even decided what those financials are. Is it even possible for somebody to do that?
Well, we presented information on the fee structure at one meeting and talked about, basing it on the charter school fee of this year is $1.88, and then we allocated 5% higher for a category C nonprofit, and then what we call a for business or a fair market value category D would be another 5% higher. So there hasn't been any additional feedback on those rates. Staff's recommendation is we wouldn't want to go, again, this is staff, we wouldn't want to go lower than $1.88 a square foot because we run into some issues there. But we've estimated, we did some calculations several months ago that the true cost of actually keeping one of our sites running averages about $5.80 a square foot. So we're already kind of in the hole. So if there's further discussions to be had on fees, we can do that. Just depends on how long we want to take this.
I remember asking some questions from the dais, and we were going to have a subsequent conversation because you guys were going to go back and because there were all these questions about partnerships, right? If you have a health one and you have an educational one, I mean, there were so many different options that it was kind of like a fee schedule that was kind of like more or less rather than a very specific criteria as to how we were going to evaluate different partners given their needs, because there could be different matchups, right? And so in my mind, as of that meeting, we were still not clear what that fee rate was going to be. And so that was the only question I had.
If I could just ask, because we only have like 30 seconds now, who gave you the direction to go out and do proposals and accept proposals? Because I don't recall this board saying that we were landing on something, and I don't see it here. So where did you get the direction to go out and do this?
Well, the 7-Eleven committee made the recommendation to not surplus the sites and to try and lease them out to keep somebody in there. So this goes way back. So staff's been working on that. This is just part of that process.
But you're impacting the financial outcome of our district. We haven't landed on a for sure fee schedule on anything. There were some questions. I mean, who laid out this criteria? Because the criteria should have been brought back to the board and voted on so that people, the respondents, were understanding that this is what the whole board was in concurrence with. So I'm just questioning now, where did the direction come from? Because I don't see it here. I see a jump from these discussions, and then all of a sudden now we're accepting proposals, but there's nothing that's been approved by the board. I think it's very premature. I'm really sorry to all the people who submitted their proposals. This hasn't even been approved by the board. None of this. I'm feeling very uncomfortable about it.
I don't have the history to know how much input the board had on those, but I mean, at some point, staff wants to move the projects along. They've come up with something that I don't know if we followed a model from somewhere else or this is common to do this kind of a proposal. But at some point, this is another one of those processes that we need to move forward. If otherwise, we have properties out there that are going to be open for whomever wants to come in and use them. And so I think for us, we want to make sure that we do have the control of where these facilities go. So if you give us some questions, some directions, we can circle back, bring something together. I'd hate to try to keep hobbling this thing along, but if you say what you need, we'll bring it, and let's make some decisions as a group to move forward.
I think you're failing to understand we can't make a decision as a group when you have staff acting solely by themselves without having board approval and coming back to the board with, again, questions that we asked and then they're going unanswered. Fee schedule is really important. We, as a Board of Education, have a fiduciary responsibility to keep this district in the positive. And if we can't settle on a fee schedule, it's very unfair to any of the proposals, the proposal makers, that we're going to consider them. I think we need to take a step back now that you're here. And I did express to you, please look at the videos. I think I've told you more than once. So please look at the videos. Please understand why there's some people here that are frustrated at the table. Let's get some questions out there. Let's get some issues resolved, and then let's do everything the right way so that we're not putting our district in another position where we're going to be in dire straits again because we rented something out too low, or we rented something out to somebody who can't really afford the charter school, square footage rate. I mean, we've really got to think this over and really think about it and for the fairness of everybody and all involved, and the neighborhoods especially. I got 3 properties in my area. Now do you understand my passion here? I got 3 properties in my area. I'm with you, Vice President Hansen. I got stuff, and I've got 3 properties, and 2 of them have no current city council member right now. So I can't even work in partnership with somebody about this area. So, we're having people jump ahead and, again, usurp the board and then disrespect us by not giving us answers to our questions. And then we're going out there to communities. I'm hearing from community members, there's a meeting over here. I didn't know about it in advance. I didn't know how to get there. This is coming from community members. It's not fair to them. They want to know what's going on in their neighborhood, in their neighborhood school. It's just not fair. Let's do it right.
Think about we voted to close the schools 2 years ago. The schools have been empty for a year and a half. So guess how much the rent is now? $0 per square foot. So we're feeling the financial impact every day. I go by Washington Elementary. Guess what? There's trash blowing up against the front door, and it looks bad. I just hate to I don't want to keep saying a broken record, but not get bogged down. Let's make some decisions. If we have to do a little bit of overtime work, let's submit our questions. Let's make sure we're reading our agenda packets so we're all up to speed, because we had the 7-Eleven committee did a proposal, did their presentation to us. How many months ago was that? 3 or 4 months ago? So we've been sitting on it for 3 or 4 months. So we got to make some move forwards. It might not be perfect, but let's, I'm for giving staff a little bit of flexibility. I think some of this, maybe there's a little bit of jumping ahead on this, but we also have to let them do their job too. So I hope that we can all work together. Let's figure out what it is we need to have going forward. But I don't want vacant properties in my district any less than anyone else here at this table, and we're all impacted by it.
Either entertain a motion to continue or adjourn. I want to make note that future board meetings, as indicated on the on 10.0, it is 10:35. So they have a motion to adjourn.
So, second.
I have a motion from Vice President Hanson, second by Vice President Pritchett. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Go safely, people. Thank you.